The village was quiet. The last traces of sunlight had faded behind the hills, leaving the world in a soft, shadowed stillness. A light breeze stirred the trees, rustling the leaves, but the sounds felt distant, muted, as if even the wind itself had learned to move more cautiously as the night approached. The air seemed thicker here, in the cool evening haze, as if the world itself held its breath. The village, nestled at the edge of the dark woods, was preparing for its daily transformation. The village square, usually bustling with life, was now empty, just cobblestones and flickering candlelight spilling from windows. The market stalls stood silent, their wares covered up, waiting for the first light of morning. Inside the homes, the low hum of evening conversation and the soft clatter of dinner preparations slowly gave way to silence. The warmth of hearth fires pushed back the cold, but there was an edge to the evening air, something unspoken that lingered just beneath the surface. It was the moment when the boundary between day and night, between what was known and what was hidden, felt most fragile. As dusk deepened, one figure stepped out into the growing darkness, becoming a silent presence on the periphery of the village. He wore no grand uniform, no shining armor. In fact, he was little more than a shadow, indistinguishable from the night around him. His task was simple, or so it seemed to those who lived in the safety of their homes: to walk the village streets, watch for danger, and ensure that nothing disturbed the peace that came with the dark. But it was not just thieves or wild animals that he guarded against. There were other, far more mysterious forces that stirred in the night, unseen but not unacknowledged. The villagers, with their well-worn routines, rarely spoke of these things, but they felt them, deep in their bones. The watchman knew this, and he knew that his duty was more than just a simple patrol. Each creak of the trees in the distance, each rustle of leaves, held a meaning that no one dared to voice aloud. What could it be? What wandered in the edges of the village, just beyond the light of the lanterns? Was it the animals, creeping closer to the settlement, or something else, something far more unsettling? The watchman didn't ask. He only moved, his boots soft on the cobblestones, his eyes always scanning the dark corners where the village's quiet seemed to stretch too far. There were things that roamed the night, things that left no trace but were known nonetheless. The watchman's silence spoke more than words ever could. It spoke of a knowing, of an acceptance of the weight he carried. The villagers, safe behind their thick walls and closed shutters, carried on with their lives. But they knew, too, that without the watchman, the fragile barrier that separated their peaceful world from the unknown would collapse. They depended on him more than they ever let on. With each step he took in the dark, each breath he held in the stillness, he held back more than just the obvious threats. His watch was a silent promise, one unspoken, but deeply felt. The village lay in its uneasy slumber, wrapped in a blanket of warmth, blissfully unaware of the very real dangers known and unknown that hovered just out of sight. And so, as the village slept, the watchman stood at the edge of the known world, guarding it against what no one dared to name. His figure remained an enigma to the villagers, an unseen guardian. His presence was a comfort, but also a reminder that not all threats had names, and not all dangers were easily understood. The night deepened, and the watchman's steps grew quieter. The village, wrapped in its own false sense of security, drifted further into slumber, unaware of the thin line between safety and chaos that the watchman was tasked with maintaining. And with every hour that passed, the shadows grew longer, stretching into places where even the watchman dared not look too closely. In the quiet hours of the night, when the world seemed to hold its breath, there was always someone awake, someone watching over the village, standing in the shadows just beyond the reach of the firelight. Long before the advent of streetlights, before the rise of police forces or modern security systems, there were the night watchmen, the silent sentinels whose sole purpose was to guard the community against both the known and the unknown. These early figures were as much a part of village life as the harvest, as intrinsic to the rhythm of ancient societies as the sun rising and setting. But their role was far more than that of a mere guard. It was vital, woven deep into the fabric of ancient existence. The first known implementations of night watch duties can be traced back to the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. In these early societies, the concept of guarding the night was not only practical, but imbued with an eerie weight. These were times when the line between the living and the supernatural was much thinner, when threats were not just from human foes, but from the unseen forces lurking in the dark. In Egypt, watchmen were tasked with safeguarding temples and royal tombs, areas rich with both earthly wealth and spiritual significance. The darkness was a realm of mystery, a place where the living could easily become entangled with the spirits of the dead. To be a night watchman in ancient Egypt was not simply a matter of securing a physical space. It was about protecting against forces beyond human comprehension, ancient gods, restless souls, and the unknown. In Greece, the role of the night watchman was similar, though the focus shifted somewhat to the safety of the city-state itself. The Greeks understood the importance of the night, not just as a time of rest, but as a vulnerable time when enemies could strike without warning. The night watchmen were often stationed along the city walls, keeping an eye out for invaders or rebels who could take advantage of the darkness. Their role, though essential, was one that went largely unnoticed until they were needed. These early watchmen were also tasked with keeping the peace, deterring criminals, and ensuring that the city's many secrets remained hidden from prying eyes. It wasn't just about keeping enemies at bay, it was about maintaining the delicate balance of order and disorder, of life and death. Rome, with its vast empire, took the concept of the night watch to a new level. The Roman Empire, always on guard against both external invaders and internal dissent, relied heavily on its watchmen. The city of Rome itself was divided into districts, each with its own group of night watchmen who roamed the streets, keeping an eye on the citizens and ensuring that the empire's laws were obeyed. But even in the great capital, the watchmen were not simply there to enforce the law. They were also the first line of defense against the supernatural, guarding against mysterious omens, unusual sightings, and strange noises that were whispered about in the dark corners of the city. In these times, it was not uncommon for the night watchman to double as a messenger of the gods, interpreting signs and omens, interpreting the strange and the supernatural through ritual and observation. What made these ancient watchmen so crucial wasn't just their physical presence. It was their understanding of the night itself as a liminal space, a place where the known and unknown collided. While daylight brought clarity, the night shrouded everything in mystery, and this is where the watchmen thrived. Their duties went beyond keeping enemies out. They were there to watch for signs, to listen for the whispers of something beyond the veil. They stood guard against much more than thieves and bandits. The night carried its own dangers, the kind that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Ancient folklore, curses, spirits, and things that men couldn't fully comprehend. These watchmen, standing at the boundaries of the known world, were tasked with guarding against threats that remained unnamed and often unspoken. As these early civilizations gave way to the medieval era, the role of the night watchman continued to evolve. In the small, isolated villages of medieval Europe, watchmen became the cornerstone of safety. Villagers, whose days were spent toiling the land or tending to livestock, often had little protection from the wilds that surrounded them. Their reliance on the night watch grew. These silent guardians were the ones who ensured that their villages didn't slip into chaos after dark, watching for marauding bands of thieves or strange creatures creeping just beyond the perimeter. Yet, as in the ancient world, their job was never just about watching for human threats. There were darker, more mysterious dangers that lurked in the deep shadows, the kind of things that no one spoke of in daylight. These early watchers were more than just guards, they were also the keepers of the village's unspoken history. They stood as the final barrier against whatever might slip in from the dark. And while we now see them as simply protectors of the night, their duties, fraught with mystery, were anything but simple. They carried with them the weight of both the real and the unknown, serving as the unseen line between order and chaos. The night was never truly silent. In the stillness of the village, there was always a sound, a whisper of the night watchman's presence. He was not simply a figure standing guard against the dark. He was the keeper of the night's rituals, the protector of not just the village's walls, but of its very soul. Every movement had purpose. Every action was deliberate, for the darkness was not merely a time to rest. It was a time when the boundary between the living and the unknown was at its thinnest. To the untrained eye, the watchman's duties might seem mundane, slow, measured steps around the village's perimeter, a watchful eye cast across the shadows, the occasional shout to mark the hour. But beneath this routine was a deeper purpose, one that blended practicality with the superstitions of the time. It was more than merely keeping watch for invaders or thieves. The watchman was a figure steeped in ritual, bound by an unspoken understanding of the forces that moved in the darkness. One of the most important tasks of the watchman was marking the passage of time. In many villages, the night was divided into specific watch periods, each marked by the sound of a horn or a call. These calls, often unique to each village or city, were more than just signals. They were a way to reassure the villagers that all was well, that the boundaries of the known world had not been breached by the unknown. But the call was not just for the people. It was a message for the night itself, for the spirits and forces that crept in the shadows. By announcing the hour, the watchman was establishing control over the night, stamping out the possibility that something darker might slip unnoticed into the village. The ritual of calling the time was often accompanied by other peculiar actions. In many cultures, the lighting of specific torches or fires marked the watchman's path. These flames were more than simple markers. They were seen as a safeguard against evil spirits, a way to cast light into places where shadows held sway. A fire at the watchman's side was not just a source of warmth, but a shield. The belief in the power of fire to ward off evil spirits, demons, or otherworldly entities was pervasive, and the watchman's torch was the front line in an ongoing battle between light and darkness. In some villages, the watchman would also carry strange implements, tools not meant for physical defense, but for spiritual protection. One such tool was the whistle, which, when blown, was thought to send out vibrations that disrupted the flow of negative energy in the air. The blowing of the whistle wasn't merely a signal, it was a deterrent, a ritual to banish any lurking darkness that might seek to invade the village. The watchman would sometimes chant under his breath, words whispered in a forgotten language, passed down through generations, believed to protect the community from unseen forces. These whispers were not just words, they were thought to carry power, to summon protection from forces that no one could see, but everyone knew were there. The rituals were often passed down through generations, and while their practical purpose was to ensure that no one could sneak past the watchman, they held deeper meaning. To the villagers, the watchman wasn't just a man walking the streets at night, he was a living connection to the past, a bridge between the safety of the daylight world and the uncertainty of the night. The rituals were comforting, for they reminded the villagers that the darkness was not to be feared, that it could be controlled, as long as the watchman remained vigilant. But the watchman's actions went beyond the physical and spiritual. There was a psychological element to his role too. Every movement he made, the lighting of the torch, the sounding of the whistle, the quiet chanting was a reassurance to the villagers that someone, something, was there. In a world where the unseen could easily overwhelm the seen, these rituals were a way to anchor the community, to create a sense of order where chaos might have taken hold. The rituals not only protected the village, but also provided a psychological barrier against the fear that came with the darkness. These strange, often unspoken practices became so ingrained in the life of the village that they were accepted without question. It was only much later that people would look back and wonder why certain rituals like the midnight calls or the strange chants had persisted for so long. What were the watchmen really guarding against? What dangers, hidden in the deepest recesses of the night, had these rituals been designed to combat? For all the practicality behind the watchman's actions, there was a lingering sense of mystery. Was it truly the thieves and wild animals that the watchman feared most? Or was it the darker, less tangible forces, those things that no one dared to name, that haunted the edges of the village? As the village slept, unaware of the rituals unfolding around them, the watchman stood guard, his steps purposeful, his mind focused on the shadows that no one else could see. The watchman's duty was not just a matter of safety, it was about maintaining a fragile, invisible barrier between the living and the things that prowled in the dark. What if the greatest danger the night watchman faced wasn't human at all? What if it was something much darker and ancient? As the watchman paced the village streets, torch in hand, he wasn't merely keeping an eye out for thieves or marauders. The night held far more sinister threats, those that didn't leave tracks in the dirt or weapons in their wake. These were the unseen forces that crept beyond the edges of the known world, where shadows weren't just the absence of light, but gateways to things that had no name. Every creak of the trees, every distant howl of the wind, could carry with it a whisper of something far older and more dangerous. These were the dangers that the villagers rarely spoke of, but felt deeply in their bones. In ancient times, the line between the natural and the supernatural was porous, and the unknown was as much a part of life as the harvest. Every night, the watchman stood at the threshold between these worlds. The creatures that lived in the dark, both human and non-human, were often wrapped in myth, passed down through whispered stories. One such legend was that of the Wendigo, a monstrous spirit said to lurk in the northern forests. According to the tales, the Wendigo was a creature of insatiable hunger, driven by a need to consume human flesh. More terrifying than its appearance was the belief that anyone who encountered the Wendigo would fall under its influence, becoming a creature themselves corrupted, twisted, and driven to devour the living. In the quiet of the night, as the wind carried strange sounds through the trees, the watchman might have shivered at the thought of such a creature. But it was not only physical threats that haunted the mind. Spirits, ghosts, and creatures that could slip between the cracks of reality were just as feared. The banshee, for example, was a figure that haunted the edges of many Celtic villages. Her wail, it was said, foretold death, and her presence was an omen, a warning of things to come. The banshee did not roam the streets like a thief. She existed in the realm between life and death, moving unseen, unheard, until the moment she made her presence known with a mournful cry. For a night watchman in a Celtic village, the sound of that wail in the stillness of the night would send chills down the spine, a sound that signaled something far darker than any mortal threat. These are only a few examples of the creatures that were whispered about as the night watchman made his rounds. Legends like these permeated the air as much as the darkness itself. Whether it was the shape-shifting creatures that could slip into the form of animals, or the ghostly figures that emerged from the fog, there were dangers that moved in the night and could never be fully understood. The night watchman, in many ways, was not just a protector, but a guardian against things that did not fit into the world of daylight and reason. What made these threats so chilling wasn't just their unknown nature, but their persistence in the minds of those who lived in the village. It wasn't the clear and present danger of a thief or an invader that kept people awake at night, but the fear of what couldn't be named. Ancient cultures, living in a world full of superstition and folklore, didn't just fear physical harm. They feared the intrusion of forces that could tear apart the very fabric of reality. And it was the night watchman who stood between these invisible horrors and the peaceful, orderly world of the living. But these threats weren't always directly seen or encountered. Instead, they were felt in the air, in the way the wind changed direction, in the strange stillness of the night. The watchman didn't need to fight the creatures themselves. He was tasked with keeping them at bay, preventing them from crossing the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the unknown. Every whistle he blew, every chant he muttered into the wind, was more than just an action. It was a ritual, a barrier against the things that couldn't be explained. The watchman's vigilance was a psychological defense as much as a physical one. The terror of facing something that couldn't be named, something beyond the limits of human comprehension, weighed heavily on the mind. Even in the stillness, every step he took was a small act of defiance against the unseen, against the unspoken terrors of the night. The watchman knew that the true dangers were not always of flesh and bone, but of shadow and spirit forces that were ancient, rooted in the fabric of the world itself, waiting to return when the time was right. As the village slept, unaware of the silent guardian walking its streets, the watchman kept watch not just for human dangers, but for the ancient forces that stirred just beyond the veil of reality. And it was his duty to ensure that they never crossed into the world of the living. The threats were many, and often unspoken, but the watchman was the one who stood at the threshold, guarding the village from the dark forces that no one could ever truly understand. The night was long, and the quiet was suffocating. But the true horror of the job wasn't the shadows, it was the overwhelming silence in which every noise seemed to be a harbinger of doom. As the night watchman walked the empty streets, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. The stillness of the village seemed unnatural, like a secret waiting to be uncovered. His every step echoed in the night, an unsettling reminder of the isolation that defined his role. It wasn't just the village he was guarding against threats, but the unknown forces lurking in the dark forces that were not visible but very much present in the quiet spaces between breaths. In the stillness of his watch, every creak of wood, every rustle of leaves carried a potential threat, and it was his job to discern the difference between a threat from nature and something more sinister. Night after night, this duty weighed on his mind. The village, safe in its sleep, had no idea of the mental strain that came with the watchman's position. To be responsible for the safety of an entire community, knowing that any moment could bring danger, was to live in constant tension. The mind begins to play tricks on those who patrol in silence, and the solitude only deepened this psychological toll. Fear of the unknown grew in the quiet hours. What if something was watching? What if the strange noises weren't just animals or the wind, but something else? What if his vigilance wasn't enough? The fear wasn't just for the village, it was deeply personal. The night watchman was isolated, both physically and mentally, from the world he guarded. While the rest of the village rested, he remained awake, alone with his thoughts and his fears. The very act of walking the streets in the dark created a sense of estrangement. In some ways, he was both part of the village and apart from it. During the day, the people would see him as a protector, an ordinary man fulfilling his duty. But at night, he was more than that. He was a figure of shadow, someone who existed only in the hours when most were asleep. His isolation was not just physical, it was emotional and psychological. The long hours alone in the dark, knowing that you were the only line of defense against unseen threats, could lead to a profound sense of alienation. The weight of superstition added to the strain. The night watchman's duty was steeped in old beliefs, in customs that had been passed down through generations. He knew that there were things beyond the visible world, things that couldn't be explained, but had to be guarded against nonetheless. Spirits, omens, strange creatures. These were the threats that lingered in the back of his mind, lingering like ghosts, half forgotten but always present. In many ways, the superstition that surrounded his role became part of the psychological burden. His job was not just about standing guard against physical dangers, but also against the unknown fears of the people. In some cultures, it was believed that the watchman's presence could ward off evil, but what did that mean for the watchman himself? Was he too protected by the rituals, or was he more vulnerable than anyone could realize? As he walked the village streets, the watchman would often find his thoughts drifting to the stories he had heard as a child. The tales of creatures that lurked in the shadows, of spirits that wandered the land, always returned to him in those lonely moments. The uncertainty of what was out there, just beyond the reach of his lantern, was a kind of terror that could gnaw at the edges of the mind. Was it the rustling of the trees just outside the village walls, or was it something more? What if he missed something? The doubt and fear that plagued the watchman at night weren't just about physical threats. They were about the unspoken, the unseen, and the intangible forces that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The loneliness was unbearable at times. No one else shared the weight of the night. The villagers rested, secure in their homes, while he remained awake, pacing, listening. In the stillness of the dark, the silence could become overwhelming, almost suffocating. In such moments, it was easy to feel like an outsider, even in his own village. The quiet of the night was not peaceful. It was a constant reminder of his isolation and his responsibility. No one truly understood the mental toll that came with his position, the constant vigilance, the fear of missing something, the mental exhaustion that slowly built with each passing hour. The psychological strain of the night watchman was compounded by the knowledge that, in some ways, his job was never truly finished. Even after his shift, the terror of the unknown could linger. What if something slipped past his guard? What if, in the quiet of the night, something had already crossed the threshold and was hiding in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike? This constant sense of unease, coupled with the isolation, made the night watchman's role one of immense psychological weight. As the night wore on, the watchman continued his lonely patrol, each step carrying him deeper into the heart of the darkness. The quiet was both a comfort and a burden. The village, safe in its slumber, remained unaware of the mental and emotional toll of the watchman's task. Yet, in the quiet hours of the night, it was the watchman's vigilance, his quiet, persistent duty that kept the shadows at bay, both in the village and in his own mind. In a world where shadows were endless and the unknown ruled the dark, one figure stepped into the night. Who was the first night watchman, and what were they protecting us from? The origins of the night watchman lie deep in the heart of early human civilization, when the line between the known and the unknown was as fragile as the flickering flame of a torch. The first watchmen were not grand heroes nor military leaders, they were simple villagers, chosen not for their strength or skill in battle, but for their vigilance and courage. In the earliest days of human settlement, danger did not come only from neighboring tribes or wild animals, it came from the night itself. As humans began to settle into the first great cities, from Mesopotamia to ancient Egypt, they faced not only the threats of the physical world, but also the overwhelming fear of the unknown. The very concept of night itself was laden with mystery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, darkness descended like a heavy curtain, pulling the world into an unfamiliar and sometimes terrifying place. It was during these hours, when the village slept and the world seemed to close its eyes, that the first watchmen were called to duty. These early guardians didn't simply stand guard against human threats. No, their job was far more complex. They were tasked with protecting their people from forces that could not be seen, things that lurked just beyond the reach of the torchlight spirits, unseen creatures, and malevolent forces that belonged to the realm of myth and superstition. In the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, the first recorded instances of night watchmen can be traced back to the rise of Sumerian civilization over 4,000 years ago. The earliest records show that night guards were stationed to protect not only the wealth of the city but its very soul. They guarded the gates of the city, keeping watch over the streets where the dark could bring not just robbers but forces of chaos. Ancient texts reveal that the watchmen were considered protectors of the sacred as much as they were guardians of material wealth. In the night, the line between the physical world and the spiritual world blurred, and the watchman's role was to ensure that no dark force crept through the gates, no shadow moved unnoticed. The watchman's role evolved with each new civilization. In ancient Egypt, where the pharaohs built monumental tombs and temples, the night watchman took on an even more sacred role. These early protectors were tasked not only with safeguarding the physical realm, but also with guarding against the unseen threats that lurked in the spiritual world. Egypt's belief in the afterlife meant that the living were never truly separate from the dead. The spirits of ancestors, gods, and demons could slip between the worlds with ease, and it was the watchman's job to prevent them from entering the realm of the living. These watchmen would often carry sacred symbols or amulets, and their duties included rituals to appease the gods and ensure that the boundaries between life and death were maintained. They were not just guards, they were mediators between worlds. Yet, the life of the night watchman wasn't one of quiet peace. It was a lonely existence, one defined by uncertainty. In those early times, there was no light pollution to soften the darkness. The night was absolute. The loneliness of standing alone in the dark, away from the comfort of the village hearth, was compounded by the fear of what could be out there. For a watchman, the most terrifying thing wasn't the threat of a thief or invader, it was the thought of what might lurk just out of sight. The mind, in the stillness of the night, could imagine monsters that didn't exist in the daylight. It could conjure up figures that moved in the shadows, far beyond the realm of human understanding. This psychological weight, the fear of the unknown, was often just as burdensome as the physical demands of the watchman's duty. Their vigilance was constant, never allowing the mind to wander or to slip into sleep, for sleep meant vulnerability. The night watchman was a guardian of not only the village's walls but of its sanity, keeping the fears of the unknown at bay. These early guards were seen as the unsung heroes, often revered but rarely acknowledged by the very people they protected. And yet, their importance was unquestionable, their presence a silent promise that the village would remain safe from forces beyond human comprehension. In time, the role of the night watchman became more institutionalized. As cities grew and civilizations advanced, the need for organized night patrols expanded. No longer was it just a solitary figure walking the streets. Instead, the watchman became a part of a larger system, one that was integral to the functioning of the city. But no matter how much time passed, the watchman's original duty never truly changed. He remained, as he always had been, the first line of defense against both physical and unseen dangers. He stood as a protector of the known world and the unknown. The first night watchman, humble and unassuming, was more than just a guard. He was a figure caught between two worlds, the tangible world of people, villages, and cities, and the intangible world of myths, spirits, and forces that no one could fully understand. As we move through history, his role would evolve, but the essence of his duty would remain the same, to stand vigilant in the face of what others could not see, guarding not just the village, but its very soul. The night watchman wasn't just a protector of flesh and blood, he was the first line of defense against forces that existed only in the dark corners of the human mind. As ancient societies grew and the world became more complex, so too did the role of the night watchman. What began as a simple duty to protect the village from robbers, wild animals, and invaders evolved into something much deeper. The night watchman became a figure caught between two worlds, the tangible world of human existence and the intangible realm of spirits, gods, and the supernatural. In many ancient cultures, the watchman's duty was not just to safeguard the village's physical boundaries, but to guard the very boundary between the living and the world of the unseen. It was a sacred trust, a responsibility that went beyond mere vigilance, transcending the physical realm and touching the spiritual and the mystical. In Mesopotamia, for example, the night watchman's role was imbued with religious significance. The ancient Sumerians believed that the night was a time when the veil between the world of the living and the world of the gods was at its thinnest. It was during the dark hours that the gods could wander among mortals, sometimes bringing blessings, sometimes bringing curses. The watchman was tasked with ensuring that no malevolent spirit, no wandering deity, crossed the threshold of the village during these hours. His duty was to safeguard not just the material wealth of the village, but its spiritual well-being. The role of the watchman, then, was far more than just a physical job. It was a sacred calling, one that required a careful balance between vigilance and reverence. The night watchman's arsenal grew beyond weapons and physical tools. It included prayers, rituals, and protective chants that were passed down through generations. These rituals weren't merely acts of superstition. They were believed to hold real power. The watchman would often carry sacred amulets or talismans, symbols of divine protection that would ward off evil spirits or malicious forces. At times, the watchman would light specific fires or torches, not simply to illuminate the streets, but to create a barrier against the unknown. Fire, in many ancient cultures, was seen as a purifying element, a force that could drive away the darkness and its associated dangers. In Egypt, where the afterlife was a central element of religious belief, the night was considered a time when the living could come into contact with the dead. The night watchman's role extended to guarding the spirits of the deceased, ensuring that they did not wander too far from their tombs and disturb the living. Some believed that the souls of the dead could return to the village at night, either to seek revenge or to protect their loved ones. The watchman was charged with ensuring that these spirits remained in their proper place, preventing them from crossing over into the world of the living. In this sense, the watchman was not just a guard against human threats, but a protector of the delicate balance between life and death. His presence was a reminder that the living and the dead coexisted in a fragile, often tenuous relationship. As the role of the watchman grew, so did the rituals associated with it. In many cultures, the watchman's responsibilities became more than just a task of observation. The watchman often had to engage in rituals of purification before his shift, such as washing his hands in sacred water, burning incense, or chanting incantations. These rituals were meant to prepare the watchman both physically and spiritually for the task ahead. He was not just standing guard against thieves, he was standing against things far more unsettling. The very act of watching became a spiritual duty, one that required both physical and mental discipline. The watchman's role blurred the lines between the protector of the village and the spiritual mediator, someone who stood between the living and the forces beyond human comprehension. In ancient Greece, the role of the night watchman was similarly intertwined with religious duties. The Greek gods were known to interfere in the affairs of mortals, and the night was seen as a time when these deities could walk among the living. The watchman was tasked not only with protecting the physical boundaries of the city, but also with keeping watch for divine omens. The sound of an owl in the night, for example, was considered a sign of Athena's protection, while the presence of strange lights or unexplained noises could be seen as a warning of impending divine retribution. The watchman's duty was not just about safeguarding against the physical world, it was about ensuring that the village remained in harmony with the gods and that no cosmic imbalance was allowed to breach the village's walls. These sacred duties of the night watchman were not without psychological and emotional tolls. The watchman knew that his role was more than just a job, it was a divine calling, one that required constant vigilance and an understanding of forces far beyond his control. The weight of this responsibility could be overwhelming. He was tasked with maintaining the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds, a role that no one else in the village could claim. The villagers, in turn, viewed the watchman with a mixture of awe and fear. They relied on him for protection, but they also understood the deeper significance of his role. To them, the watchman was more than just a guard, he was a protector of their very souls, standing as a barrier between them and the darker forces that lingered just out of sight. The trust placed in the night watchman was immense. It was a trust not just in his ability to see and hear what others could not, but in his ability to understand and navigate the unseen world of spirits and gods. His vigilance was not just a practical duty, it was a sacred trust, one that carried the weight of the village's well-being, both in the material world and in the realm of the supernatural. In a world where the boundaries between life and death, the living and the divine, were constantly in flux, the night watchman stood as the final protector, the one who kept watch over the fragile divide that separated the two. As ancient societies expanded and their needs grew more complex, the duties of the night watchman evolved. But in many ways, his role remained unchanged. He was the boundary keeper, the one who stood at the edge of the known world and kept watch over the unknown. His was a sacred duty, blending the practical with the spiritual, the seen with the unseen. The night watchman, in all his forms, was a guardian of the village's very soul, entrusted with the responsibility of protecting not just the body, but the spirit. When the village was surrounded, no one knew what was more dangerous, the enemy at the gates or the dark things waiting just beyond the torchlight. It was a night that would test the very fabric of the village's existence, a night when the role of the night watchman became a matter of life and death. The village, nestled in a remote valley, had long relied on its night watch to keep the peace. Yet on this fateful evening, the usual threats were nothing compared to the peril that loomed on the horizon. The invaders, a band of ruthless marauders from a neighboring region, had come under the cover of night. Their movements were swift and silent, but the watchman, stationed at the village's outer edge, was the first to notice the shift in the air, the uneasy stillness, the absence of the usual sounds of nocturnal creatures. He had no time to alert the villagers, no time to rally his fellow watchmen. The invaders were already at the gates, their torches illuminating the darkness, like fiery fingers reaching toward the heart of the village. The watchman's heart raced, not only with the fear of physical harm, but with the realization that the night was no longer his ally. The very forces that had protected the village from unseen threats now seemed to conspire against them. The darkness, once a barrier between the known and the unknown, had become the very thing that hid their enemies from view, making it impossible to see where the next danger would come from. As the watchman hurried to raise the alarm, he was not only confronting the physical threat of invasion, but also the dark unknowns that had always lingered just out of sight. He called out to the villagers, but in that moment, the noise seemed to echo back at him, swallowed by the night. The quiet had become unbearable. The air, thick with tension, seemed to pull at the edges of his mind. He wasn't just guarding the village from human invaders, there was something more that stalked the shadows, something the villagers had only ever whispered about. In the distance, the faint glow of torchlight flickered against the trees. The marauders were drawing closer, their voices low and menacing, their movements swift as they crept through the dark. The watchman's eyes scanned the tree line, every rustle of leaves sending a jolt of adrenaline through his body. The ancient rituals and prayers that had been passed down through generations suddenly seemed more than just superstition. They were lifelines. He muttered an old chant under his breath, invoking the spirits of protection, hoping that the powers he had long respected might stand with him in this desperate hour. But the night, filled with both tangible and intangible threats, didn't seem to care for ancient words or old traditions. Then, in a horrifying moment of clarity, the watchman saw it a movement just beyond the reach of his torchlight, a shape that seemed to glide between the shadows. It wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It was something darker, something that had lived in the legends of the village for as long as anyone could remember. The fear that gripped him wasn't just fear of an enemy soldier, but of something that could not be fought, something that existed in the realm between the living and the dead. The watchman's breath caught in his throat. He knew this was no ordinary siege. This was something that had been foretold in the old stories, in the warnings of the elders who spoke of things that crept into villages during times of war and unrest. As the marauders pressed forward, the watchman's responsibility grew heavier. Not only was he tasked with defending against physical invaders, but he was also the protector of the village's very soul. The rituals of the past had never felt so real, so necessary. He had no choice but to confront both the living and the supernatural, to stand firm against whatever darkness approached. The villagers, their hearts pounding in fear, turned to him, their eyes filled with a mixture of dread and trust. He was more than a guard now, he was their last line of defense, standing against the chaos that threatened not only their lives but their very sense of safety in the world. As the battle raged on, the the watchman's nerves were tested in ways they had never been before. He fought with sword and shield, but his mind never fully left the shadows. He could feel them, lurking just outside the circle of light. Each moment seemed like an eternity, each battle cry from the invaders mingling with the haunting sounds that echoed from the darkness. It was the psychological weight of this moment that would change the watchman forever. The realization that his duty was not just physical, but spiritual, and the lines between the two were becoming increasingly blurred. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the village, the invaders were driven back, but the cost was high. The village had survived, but at what cost to those who had stood against the night? The watchman, though physically unscathed, carried a heavy burden. The night had revealed more than just the strength of his body. It had revealed the depth of his responsibility and the toll of facing not just human enemies, but those dark, unseen forces that had always lingered in the shadows. This moment, this test of courage and duty, marked a turning point. The watchman was no longer just a figure standing guard over the village. He had become the embodiment of the village's connection to both the physical and the supernatural realms. His role was more than just a protector. He was a mediator between worlds, standing at the crossroads where the tangible and the intangible met. The village's survival, its very soul, rested on his vigilance, and the night had proven how fragile that balance truly was. In the years that followed, the story of this siege would be passed down through generations, not just as a tale of bravery, but as a reminder of the darker forces that lurked in the edges of the known world, forces that the night watchman had to face and conquer, not just with sword and shield, but with faith, ritual, and an unshakable commitment to his sacred duty. Over time, the line between man and myth blurred, and the night watchman became something more a protector whose legend was as dark as the shadows they guarded against. In the earliest days, the night watchman was a simple, humble figure, a villager chosen to stand guard while others slept. His role was grounded in the very real need for protection against human invaders, wild beasts, and the unknown dangers of the dark. But as the years passed, stories began to evolve. What was once a routine duty became something far greater, something steeped in mystery. Tales of watchmen grew with the village's fears and imagination, turning the figure who once stood guard into a legend that blurred the boundaries of fact and folklore. In the quiet, secluded corners of villages, where the nights seemed longer and the shadows more ominous, stories of these guardians grew into something more than mere recollections of service. The night watchman began to embody not just the protection of physical safety, but a safeguard against forces that couldn't be named. These were forces whispered about in hushed voices, spirits, omens, malevolent entities that crept in the dark, unseen by most but felt by all. Over time, the watchman's nightly vigilance became more than a duty. It became an essential link between the human realm and the supernatural. In some cultures, watchmen were said to possess the ability to see beyond the material world. They could peer into the spirit world, their heightened senses attuned to things hidden from the eyes of ordinary people. These watchmen became figures of reverence, revered not only for their bravery but for their mysterious connection to the unseen realms. Some were believed to possess powers beyond human comprehension abilities, to ward off evil spirits with nothing more than a word or a gesture. In the dark of night, when the winds howled and shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, the villagers would speak of their watchmen as protectors with mystical powers, capable of confronting entities that lurked just beyond the veil. Stories began to circulate of watchmen who could walk through shadows unharmed, or who would call upon the spirits of ancestors to guide their watch. These supernatural elements wove themselves into the fabric of their role, as the night watchman's function grew more mythologized over time. What was once a man walking the streets, lantern in hand, now became a figure cloaked in mystery, feared as much as revered. The very same people who had once relied on the watchman for protection now told tales of his ability to combat threats that no one could see, and to defeat enemies that no sword could touch. As the centuries passed, the story of the night watchman evolved. From a protector of villages, he became a figure whose actions were surrounded by an aura of the unknown. The night, which had once been filled with the sounds of routine, now became the stage for these larger-than-life figures, whose stories grew with every retelling. The line between the night watchman as a simple guardian and the night watchman as a legendary hero, capable of battling supernatural forces, grew increasingly difficult to distinguish. And so, The watchman's role became more than just that of a protector. He became a figure of legend, woven into the folklore of countless cultures. The watchman's story, his nightly duties, his encounters with things beyond understanding, and his ability to guard against both human and supernatural threats, became a part of the larger narrative of the unknown, passed down from generation to generation. With each new telling, his role expanded, and soon no village was complete without its own watchman whose legend loomed large, casting a long shadow in both the physical and mystical worlds. As civilization advanced and the shadows began to recede, the night watchman's flame flickered out. But did they truly disappear, or have they evolved into something we still rely on today? The decline of the night watchman's role came slowly, creeping in as societies grew more complex, more interconnected, and more technologically advanced. In the early days, the watchman was an indispensable figure, a lone sentinel guarding against not just human threats, but the eerie forces of the night. But as the world moved from small villages to bustling towns and cities, and as the machinery of modernity began to take hold, the role of the night watchman became increasingly redundant. One of the first nails in the night watchman's coffin came with the advent of formalized law enforcement. As cities expanded, it became apparent that guarding a city could not be left to the solitary figures walking the streets with only a lantern and a whistle. The establishment of organized police forces, with dedicated officers, official duties, and systems of law, began to replace the role of the watchman. The night watchman, once a protector of both the physical and the mystical realms, found himself sidelined as the duties of law enforcement took over. The police were better equipped, better trained, and, perhaps most importantly, better organized. They could respond to emergencies with more authority, and their presence became a symbol of modernity and order in a rapidly changing world. But it wasn't just the rise of law enforcement that led to the decline of the watchman's sacred role. The advent of street lighting was perhaps the most significant blow. Before the streets were lit by gas lamps and electric lights, the night was a domain of darkness. The night watchman's job was not only to keep out thieves, but to ensure that the dark itself didn't bring danger, whether from invaders or from the supernatural. The lights, however, slowly pushed back the shadows. The ability to see the streets clearly, to cast light on the alleys where danger once lurked, reduced the need for a watchman's watchful eye. As cities grew brighter, their streets more secure, the physical threats the watchman had once stood against dwindled. Technological innovations also played their part in this transformation. As alarm systems, surveillance cameras, and eventually the internet became integrated into the fabric of daily life, the need for human watchmen faded further. The streets were no longer the sole domain of those who stood guard under the stars. The world had evolved, and with it, the need for the night watchman was diminished. But did this mean he had truly disappeared? Not entirely. While the traditional role of the night watchman may have become obsolete, there remains a symbolic presence in modern life that echoes his duty. The idea of vigilance, of safeguarding what is precious, lives on. The night watchman's flame flickered, yes, but it didn't vanish, it adapted. In folklore and popular culture, the archetype of the vigilant guardian persists. We see it in stories of superheroes, in the figure of the solitary detective working through the night, and in the countless characters who patrol dark streets to protect the innocent. The watchman's vigilance is now embodied in a different form, one that relies on technology and societal structures, but the essence of his role remains the same: to stand guard, to protect, to ensure that the darkness doesn't swallow the light. Modern-day security systems, though far more efficient, still carry the watchman's spirit. Surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and alarm systems are the technological descendants of the watchman's vigilance. The need for protection has not changed, only the means by which it is achieved. What was once a man with a lantern, walking the streets with caution and suspicion, is now a series of algorithms watching over us, often unseen, ensuring our safety. The watchman's role, though no longer one of nightly patrols, has been woven into the infrastructure of modern life. The decline of the night watchman marks the end of an era, but it also marks the beginning of a new age, one where the idea of protection is both more pervasive and more invisible. The night watchman's flame may have flickered out, but the duty it represented, guarding against both physical and unseen dangers, remains with us. It has simply evolved into new forms we rely on without a second thought, but which still carry the echoes of those ancient guardians standing watch over the darkness. As we look back at the decline of the night watchman, we see how this once vital role gave way to the systems of protection we now take for granted. Yet, the story is far from over. In the next section, we'll explore the lasting impact the night watchman's role has had on modern culture, from literature to film, and how these legends continue to serve as symbols of vigilance, protection, and the battle against the unknown. The night watchman may be gone, but his legacy, in some form, lives on in every guardian who watches over us, day and night. Though the watchman no longer patrols our streets, their spirit continues to guard us, hidden in the stories we tell and the icons we create. The ancient night watchman, once a solitary figure tasked with keeping the darkness at bay, has evolved into a symbol that resonates across modern culture. His legacy endures in ways that are both visible and subtle, shaping everything from our favorite fictional heroes to the very structures of protection that keep us safe today. The watchman's role, though no longer performed by an individual with a lantern and a whistle, continues to thrive in the archetypes we see in literature, film, and even in our daily lives. In literature, the night watchman has been reborn in many forms: heroes, vigilantes, and guardians who stand against forces that threaten the safety and order of society. Take, for example, the figure of the watchman in Gothic literature, often portrayed as the last line of defense against the supernatural. Characters like Dr. Van Helsing in Dracula times, and even Sherlock Holmes, who spends his nights solving mysteries, carry the torch passed down from the ancient watchman. They are protectors, but their watch is not just of physical threats, it is of the unseen, the supernatural, and the unknown. These figures are imbued with a deep sense of duty, much like the ancient watchman, but their vigilance often extends beyond the boundaries of the ordinary world into realms where danger is not just tangible but mythical. In modern suspense thrillers, the archetype of the night watchman continues to take form in characters who operate in the shadows, on the fringes of society, keeping watch over what others cannot see. These characters are often detectives, private investigators, or vigilantes who deal with threats that are more psychological than physical. They stand between the light and the dark, between order and chaos, much like the night watchmen of old. Whether it's Batman, who patrols Gotham City's streets, or the brooding figures in classic noir films, these modern-day watchmen fight to protect the vulnerable from forces that would otherwise go unnoticed or unspoken. Horror stories, too, have embraced the essence of the night watchman, but in a more sinister light. The watchman in these stories is often a guardian figure, but one who finds themselves battling forces beyond human comprehension: ghosts, demons, or creatures that prey upon the living. Films like Times the Sixth Sense Times or Times the Others Times use this archetype to build tension, with the protagonists playing roles akin to that of the ancient watchman, tasked with protecting the living from unseen forces. These figures serve not only as protectors, but as the bridge between two worlds: the world of the living and the world of the dead, the known and the unknown. In these stories, the watchman's vigilance often becomes a battle for the soul, as much as a battle for survival. The night watchman's legacy also persists in the form of modern security personnel, security guards, police officers, and military personnel who still walk the streets at night, guarding against threats both human and otherwise. While the tools and technologies may have changed, the essence of the watchman's role remains the same: to protect the community from harm, often unseen, often lurking just beyond the reach of light. Modern surveillance systems, alarm networks, and neighborhood watch programs echo the watchman's duty, translating ancient practices into technological forms. Yet, just as the ancient watchman could not always see the threats that existed in the darkness, modern security forces rely on technology to uncover what the eye cannot. Despite all the advancements, however, the core principle remains unchanged. Vigilance is the key to safety. Even in our personal lives, the night watchman's influence remains ever present. We lock our doors, check the windows before bed, and ensure that our homes are secure. These actions are the modern equivalent of the night watchman's patrol, a way to keep the unknown at bay, to ensure that we are protected while we sleep. The psychological need for protection at night, the fear of what we cannot see but suspect is there, speaks directly to the ancient role of the watchman. That instinct to guard against the unseen, to fortify the walls between us and the things we cannot understand, is a deep-rooted part of human nature that transcends time. The night watchman's spirit can also be found in the psychological aspect of vigilance. The role of the night watchman wasn't just about guarding physical boundaries, it was about ensuring that no harm, no evil, could cross into the realm of the living. This sense of vigilance has evolved into our modern-day anxieties, where we worry about the unseen dangers lurking in the digital world, in the quiet spaces of our lives. Cybersecurity experts, for example, are the new guardians of the night, standing watch over our personal information and digital privacy. While the tools may have changed, the essence of the watchman's duty to guard against unseen dangers remains the same. What remains clear is that the night watchman's legacy has moved far beyond the simple duty of guarding physical boundaries. His role has evolved into something far more complex, reflecting our continued need for protection against both the visible and invisible. The watchman's vigilance, once focused on warding off invaders and spirits, has transformed into a modern-day vigilance against crime, chaos, and the unknown forces of both the physical and digital worlds. And so, as we look at the night watchman in modern culture, we realize that while the figure may no longer patrol our streets, his essence still pervades the very fabric of our society. From the heroes we admire in stories and films, to the modern-day protectors who guard us while we sleep, the night watchman's vigilance is a thread that connects the past to the present. The night may no longer be as dark as it once was, but the need for guardians, for watchmen to stand between us and the unknown, remains as strong as ever. As we move from the cultural impact of the night watchman to the deeper psychological underpinnings of their role, we'll see how these timeless figures still influence us today. The fear of the unknown, the terror of what might be lurking just out of sight, is something we still grapple with, and the legacy of the night watchman offers us a glimpse into how we cope with that fear. Though we no longer rely on a lone figure to guard our villages, modern society still lives in the shadow of the watchman's gaze. Only now, it's through the eyes of cameras and sensors that never sleep. The role of the night watchman, once filled by a solitary figure walking the streets with nothing more than a lantern and a whistle, has largely faded from our cities and villages. But as societies advanced and technology blossomed, the core concept of vigilance and the protection of the unknown persisted. The human need for security, for knowing that someone or something is watching, has remained a constant throughout history. It's simply the form that has changed. The watchman of old has transformed into a system, a series of interconnected devices, surveillance cameras, alarm systems, and police forces that now carry the torch of vigilance in the modern world. The advent of security cameras and alarm systems has rendered the physical watchman largely obsolete. No longer does a single person patrol the streets at night, listening for the sounds of footsteps or watching for movement in the shadows. Instead, the flicker of a security camera on a street corner, the hum of a motion sensor, or the silent operation of an automated alarm system serves as the modern-day equivalent of the watchman's vigilance. These devices, unlike their human predecessors, don't tire, they don't sleep, and they don't need rest. They operate 24/7, silently monitoring the spaces they are tasked with protecting. Where the night watchman once walked the streets, eyes scanning the dark, now these machines fulfill the same function, providing the reassurance that no threat goes unnoticed. The technology has not only replaced the watchman's presence but has enhanced it, making it more pervasive. Security systems can now monitor every angle, every corner of a neighborhood, ensuring that no corner is left unguarded, no shadow unexamined. This shift from human guards to technological systems has altered society's relationship with the idea of protection. What once required a living, breathing individual now relies on passive, often invisible systems that are woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. But even as technology has replaced the physical presence of the watchman, the fundamental desire for vigilance remains deeply ingrained. We still need the sense of safety, the knowledge that someone or something is watching over us, especially when the darkness falls. The ever-watchful eyes of surveillance systems mirror the function of the ancient night watchman. The surveillance cameras on every corner, the motion-activated lights illuminating our driveways, and the alarms that buzz in the dead of night all serve as the modern equivalents of the watchman's constant vigilance. These systems may be more efficient, more comprehensive, but they continue to fulfill the same psychological need, the need to be protected from the unseen. The transformation of vigilance from human to technological has also shifted how we view protection. In ancient times, the night watchman wasn't just a protector of the physical world. He was a symbol of the community's security, a guardian who stood between the known world and the unknown. Today, technology does the same thing, although it's often invisible, operating behind the scenes, its presence felt, but not always seen. We no longer interact with the watcher in the same way we once did. The night watchman's role has become passive, almost omnipresent, but it's no less essential. These modern systems, though not human, provide us with the comfort that the darkness, both literal and metaphorical, will not overtake us. There is also a psychological component to this transformation. The constant surveillance we now live under mimics the watchful eyes of the ancient night watchman. We are aware, on some level, that we are always being observed, whether by security cameras, by our smartphones, or by the algorithms that track our every online move. In many ways, this constant monitoring fulfills the same psychological need that the night watchman's vigilance once did. It assures us that we are safe, that we are being guarded against forces we cannot always see or understand. But unlike the solitary watchman, who was a human figure, present in the physical world and bound by time and space, today's systems are often invisible, silently watching from above, from hidden corners, or behind digital screens. This shift has created a world where we are always being monitored, yet often remain unaware of the specifics of that monitoring. It's a different kind of protection, one that is no longer anchored in the physical realm, but in the digital and electronic. The comfort we once derived from the presence of a human guardian has now been transferred to the quiet hum of cameras and sensors, each functioning to maintain a semblance of safety in an increasingly unpredictable world. The rise of surveillance technology raises questions about how we view safety in the modern age. While we no longer rely on a lone individual walking the streets at night, we still rely on the same concept, vigilance against threats that may lurk in the shadows, unseen and often unknown. Whether it's a camera watching the corner of the street, an alarm on a house, or a police officer patrolling a neighborhood, the legacy of the night watchman is alive in these modern systems. Technology has amplified the watchman's role, but the need for protection against the unknown, the desire to feel secure, remains as potent as ever. Moving from this comparison between ancient and modern systems of protection, we will delve into the deeper psychological effects of living in a world where vigilance has become ubiquitous. How does this constant monitoring affect us? Does the presence of technology, always watching, make us feel safer, or does it increase our anxiety, reminding us of the dangers lurking in the dark? The psychology of constant vigilance and its impact on our sense of security will shape the next stage of this exploration into the night watchman's enduring legacy. What happens when the watchman is no longer a man, but an unseen eye in the sky, always watching, always waiting for something to happen? Is our constant surveillance a sign of progress or a reflection of our deepest, most ancient fears? We live in a world where the watchman has evolved into something far more pervasive and, in many ways, far more sinister, an invisible network of cameras, sensors, and algorithms that monitor our every move. The physical watchman, once a solitary figure who stood in the shadows, has now been replaced by a quiet, omnipresent digital sentinel. Yet, just as the ancient night watchman was tasked with observing and protecting, these modern systems serve the same purpose: to ensure that nothing goes unseen, that no threat, no matter how small, escapes notice. But as we've seen throughout history, constant vigilance comes at a cost. The psychological effects of constant surveillance are subtle, yet profound. In the past, the watchman's presence, his lantern swinging in the dark, his whistle cutting through the night, was a symbol of safety. It reassured the villagers, offering a sense of control over the unknown. But as we've transitioned to a world where surveillance is embedded in the very fabric of our lives, the comfort once provided by human observation has morphed into something more uncomfortable, more invasive. The presence of cameras in every corner, the constant data collection, the knowledge that we are always being watched, this persistent monitoring brings with it a psychological burden that many of us are only beginning to understand. Studies have shown that the effects of surveillance can lead to increased anxiety and paranoia. The simple knowledge that we are being observed changes how we behave. We may not even realize it, but our actions become more cautious, more deliberate. The mere thought of being watched can influence how we speak, how we move, and even how we think. It's a psychological reaction to the invisible gaze that, much like the ancient watchman's lantern, is always with us, though we can no longer see it directly. This constant monitoring leads to what is known as surveillance anxiety, where individuals feel a heightened sense of fear about being judged or scrutinized, even in the most private of moments. But it's not just anxiety that arises from this constant vigilance. There's also the erosion of privacy, something that has become increasingly difficult to preserve in our hyper-connected world. The watchman of old was a solitary figure, trusted by the community to maintain the safety of the village. But the modern watchman, the cameras, the sensors, the systems that collect and process our data, is not just watching the streets or the houses, it is watching us. Our every online activity, every step we take, every purchase we make, is being recorded and stored. We've become the watched, and the watchman, once a human figure we could trust, has become an abstract, often faceless force that is much harder to comprehend. This erosion of privacy is a direct consequence of our growing reliance on technology for safety and security. The ancient night watchman's presence was tangible. People could see him, could hear him. He was a figure who lived among them. Today's surveillance is far less personal. We no longer interact with the systems that protect us. Instead, we are constantly monitored by networks that are invisible to us, acting in the background, gathering data and information in ways that we often don't even realize. While this surveillance can offer a sense of security, it also fosters an unsettling awareness that our personal space is no longer truly private. But is this constant surveillance a sign of progress? Or is it a reflection of something far deeper, a primal fear that dates back to the very origins of human civilization? Our obsession with security, with ensuring that no danger lurks in the shadows, is not merely a modern phenomenon. It's rooted in the same ancient need for protection that the night watchman embodied. The fear of the unknown, the anxiety about what exists beyond the boundaries of our sight, has always been with us. The night watchman, standing alone in the dark, was a figure that gave the villagers a sense of control over the unknown. Today, we rely on technology to provide that same sense of security, but in doing so, we've replaced human intuition and empathy with cold, mechanical observation. This shift has profound implications for how we relate to the world around us. As our environment becomes more monitored, more controlled, we may begin to lose sight of the human connections that once defined our sense of safety. Where the night watchman was an individual, a protector you could trust and interact with, today's surveillance systems are faceless and impersonal. We've traded the warmth of human vigilance for the efficiency of technology, but in doing so, we may have lost something essential: the sense that we are being watched over by someone who understands our fears, who shares in our sense of vulnerability. As we transition from this exploration of the psychological effects of constant surveillance, we will look at the broader societal implications of living in a world where the watchman's gaze never truly leaves us. How has this changed the way we interact with one another? What does it mean for our understanding of privacy, safety, and freedom in a society that is constantly monitored? These questions will lead us into a deeper examination of how our relationship with security and our fear of the unknown shapes modern culture, from social dynamics to individual behavior. In an age of digital threats and global uncertainty, the watchman's job isn't over, it's just taken a different form. But are we safer, or are we just as vulnerable as those ancient villages that feared the things lurking in the dark? The legacy of the night watchman persists in modern society, though its form has evolved to match the changing landscape of fear. Once, the watchman's primary responsibility was to stand guard against physical threats, robbers, invaders, and the occasional wild animal. But today, the collective fear has expanded to encompass threats both real and imagined, ranging from crime and terrorism to the ever-present digital threats lurking on the internet. In many ways, the role of the watchman has adapted to these new fears, shifting from a solitary figure with a lantern to an entire network of security systems, law enforcement agencies, and cybersecurity experts. The watchman, once a man alone in the dark, is now a symbol of vigilance in a much larger, more complex world of uncertainty. As societies progressed, the fear of the unknown that once fueled the need for the night watchman did not disappear. Instead, it took new forms, manifesting in the collective anxieties that define the modern age. Crime, terrorism, cyber attacks, these are the new boogeymen that haunt our lives. The darkness that once concealed unknown dangers has now become the virtual realm, where threats are no longer visible to the naked eye but hidden behind screens and encryption. The watchman's duty, which once involved patrolling the streets at night, has evolved into the realm of surveillance cameras, security checkpoints, and national intelligence agencies, systems designed to keep watch over us, whether we are aware of them or not. The modern watchman is no longer just an individual guarding the streets. Today, we have entire systems and institutions designed to protect us from these unseen threats. Police forces, national security agencies, and cybersecurity experts are the new watchmen, working tirelessly to detect and neutralize threats before they can materialize. These guardians, like their ancient counterparts, act in the background, often invisible but always present, ensuring that the safety of society remains intact. The physical presence of a watchman may no longer be necessary on every street corner, but the psychological need for vigilance remains unchanged. However, as the tools and methods of surveillance have evolved, so too has the nature of fear. The night watchman was once tasked with protecting the village from the tangible robbers, wild beasts, and invaders. But now, much of our fear is tied to intangible threats, terrorist attacks, mass surveillance, cybercrimes, and breaches of personal privacy. In a world where information is power, the unknown has transformed into the digital ether, a place where threats can come from anywhere, at any time, often without warning. We no longer just fear what we can see, we fear what we can't see. The invisible hand of a hacker, the unseen figure in a darkened alley, or the terrorist waiting to strike. What remains constant is the human desire for protection, the need to feel safe from forces that we can neither understand nor control. The watchman's role may have shifted, but it has not disappeared. Instead, it has become more diffuse, embedded in the systems that govern modern society. The pervasive nature of surveillance, whether through CCTV cameras, social media monitoring, or internet tracking, reminds us that we are always being watched. Yet, unlike the physical presence of the ancient watchman, these modern forces are often faceless, invisible, and less personal. The psychological effect of this constant monitoring is profound, as we are left to wonder, are we truly safe, or are we simply more aware of the dangers that lurk in the shadows? The societal implications of this modern vigilance are significant. With the growth of surveillance technology, we have traded some of our personal privacy for the comfort of knowing that we are protected. But at what cost? The ancient night watchman worked as an integral part of the community, trusted by the villagers to stand guard against the darkness. Today, the systems that guard us are more distant and often less accountable. While we may feel safer with the technological advancements at our disposal, there is a growing sense of unease about the erosion of privacy, the loss of personal agency, and the way in which our lives are increasingly monitored. The fear of the unknown, the very force that drove the creation of the night watchman, still shapes our world. As we have moved into an era of global uncertainty, the role of the watchman has expanded beyond the village and into the global stage. Modern threats, whether physical or digital, demand a new kind of vigilance, one that is ever-present, all-seeing, and far-reaching. But as the boundaries of our security have expanded, so too has our sense of vulnerability. As we move into the next section, we will explore how the night watchman has continued to live on in modern storytelling. From literature to film, the figure of the watchman has been adapted and reinterpreted in countless ways, reflecting our ongoing fascination with the struggle between safety and danger, and between the known and the unknown. The night watchman, though no longer a physical presence in our streets, continues to serve as a powerful symbol in the stories we tell about ourselves. In literature, the night watchman is never just a guard. He is a symbol, a living embodiment of our collective fear and need for protection. But in the pages of history, what does he really watch for? The archetype of the night watchman has been a persistent and powerful figure throughout literature, spanning centuries and cultures. From ancient texts to contemporary novels, the watchman has been depicted not only as a protector of physical spaces, but also as a guardian against the unknown, whether it be the darkness of the night, the threat of supernatural forces, or the internal fears that lurk within the human soul. The figure of the watchman, often solitary and vigilant, resonates deeply with our primal instincts, embodying themes of sacrifice, vigilance, and the eternal battle against forces that cannot be seen but are always felt. In early literary traditions, the night watchman often served as a literal figure, standing guard against tangible dangers. Medieval ballads and folklore, such as the tales from Britain and the Norse sagas, frequently feature night watchmen or sentinels who are tasked with guarding castles, villages, or sacred spaces against intruders. In these stories, the watchman often has a dual role, both as a protector of the community and as a figure standing between the known world and the unknown. In such tales, the night watchman is not just an observer, but an active participant in the battle against darkness, whether it be the physical darkness of night or the metaphorical darkness of evil and chaos. As literature evolved, so too did the role of the night watchman. The watchman became a symbol of moral and spiritual vigilance, often tasked with standing guard against more abstract, supernatural threats. The works of the Victorian era, for instance, often depicted the watchman figure as a sentinel, not just against robbers, but also against spiritual or psychological forces. In novels like Times Dracula Times by Bram Stoker, for example, the night watchman archetype is seen in characters who stand vigilant against supernatural beings, embodying a larger theme of humanity's struggle against forces beyond their control. The night watchman's vigilance is not limited to physical boundaries. It extends into the realm of the unseen, where darkness is synonymous with fear, the unknown, and the supernatural. One of the most notable modern portrayals of the night watchman comes from Sarah Waters' novel Times, The Night Watch *, where the figure of the watchman is a metaphor for the lingering fears and hidden truths that lurk in the shadows of human existence. Set during and after World War II, Waters' novel explores themes of secrecy, guilt, and the unseen consequences of war. Here, the night watchman is not a literal guardian standing on a physical wall, but a representation of the emotional and psychological surveillance that individuals endure as they navigate their hidden lives. The watchman, in this case, is both an observer and a symbol of protection, but also of repression and the dangers of ignoring what lies beneath the surface. In earlier literary traditions, the night watchman was often portrayed as a tragic figure, embodying themes of sacrifice and isolation. The watchman's duty was never an easy one. He was required to be vigilant and watchful at the expense of his own rest and comfort. This theme of sacrifice is especially prevalent in medieval and Renaissance literature, where the night watchman's role was seen as noble but burdensome. In works like Geoffrey Chaucer's Times Canterbury Tales *, characters such as the night watchman are woven into stories of moral tests and trials, representing not only the external battle against physical dangers, but the internal struggle between duty and desire, light and dark. The watchman's duty, therefore, is a constant reminder of the tension between the world of the living and the unseen forces that threaten to breach its boundaries. The night watchman's role in literature often highlights the isolation that comes with being tasked with the protection of others. Much like the solitary figure standing alone in the dark, the literary watchman is often depicted as a person who stands apart from the rest of society, unable to rest, unable to sleep, while others are safely shielded from danger. This isolation is not just physical, but emotional and psychological. The watchman, as a figure bound to the night, represents the burden of responsibility, the fear of the unknown, and the sense of unease that comes with standing watch against things that are not easily understood. As literature continued to evolve, the figure of the night watchman became less about guarding specific locations and more about guarding against the forces of fear itself. In modern literature, the archetype has been adapted into a variety of forms, from detectives and vigilantes in mystery novels to the guardians of fantastical worlds in fantasy and horror genres. Whether it's a character like the Batman of graphic novels or the seemingly ordinary but secretly heroic figures in works like Times, the Watchmen Times graphic novel by Alan Moore, the night watchman has become a symbol of the fight against chaos, the unknown, and the unseen forces that threaten order. The archetype has shifted, but the core qualities of vigilance, courage, and sacrifice remain constant. In conclusion, the night watchman has been a powerful figure in literature, symbolizing humanity's ongoing struggle against darkness, both literal and metaphorical. From medieval ballads to modern thrillers and horror stories, the figure of the watchman endures as a protector, a symbol of vigilance, and a reminder that the line between safety and danger is often thinner than we realize. These literary watchmen serve not only to protect their communities, but also to illustrate the deeper psychological and emotional landscapes of human fear and the need for security. As the world continues to evolve, the night watchman's legacy in literature endures, adapting to new forms, but always rooted in the same essential need for protection against the unknown. Having explored the watchman in literature, we now turn our attention to how this archetype has been transformed in modern cinema. The next section will examine how the Night Watchman has been reinterpreted for contemporary audiences in film, revealing how the symbol of the vigilant guardian continues to resonate in today's visual storytelling. From the streets of ancient villages to the dark alleys of Gotham, the Night Watchman is no longer just a man guarding against ghosts. He is a symbol of our deepest fears, and in the shadows of modern cinema, he still guards the night. The evolution of the Night Watchman, from a solitary figure patrolling the streets at night to an almost supernatural protector in modern media, reflects the changing nature of our collective anxieties and desires. In today's films and television, the Night Watchman has transcended his original role as a mere sentinel guarding against physical threats. He has become a symbol of vigilance, sacrifice, and moral conflict, confronting not only the dangers lurking in the dark, but also the moral, ethical, and psychological challenges of the modern world. The ancient watchman who stood alone at the gates of the village has morphed into a larger-than-life figure, often imbued with supernatural or extraordinary qualities, grappling with complex issues of justice, power, and the unknown. One of the most notable modern adaptations of the Night Watchman figure can be found in the 2004 Russian film Times, Night Watch Asterisk, directed by Timur Bekmambetov. Set in a contemporary Moscow, the film imagines a world where the ancient battle between light and dark continues in the form of secretive others, beings who wield both magical powers and the ability to influence the world around them. In this film, the role of the Watchman is taken to a supernatural extreme. The protagonist, Anton, is part of a secret order of Night Watchmen who are charged with maintaining a fragile peace between the forces of light and darkness. The Watchman is no longer merely guarding against thieves or invaders. He is now tasked with preventing the collapse of the balance between good and evil itself. This heightened responsibility taps into the age-old fears of chaos and disorder, turning the Night Watchman into a protector not only of the physical world, but of the very fabric of reality. In Time's Night Watch Asterisk, the Watchman figure is imbued with supernatural abilities, representing the modern twist on the ancient archetype. His role has expanded beyond the mundane and into the realm of the cosmic, where the stakes are not just human but existential. This evolution reflects contemporary fears that extend beyond physical safety into psychological and metaphysical concerns, issues of power, morality, and the unknown forces that govern our lives. The Night Watchman in this context becomes not just a guard, but a symbol of the constant struggle between light and dark, good and evil, knowledge and ignorance. Another film that continues the transformation of the Night Watchman archetype is the 2009 adaptation of Time's Watchman Asterisk, based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore. In this film, the Watchman figure is reimagined through the character of Rorschach, a vigilante who patrols the streets with brutal, uncompromising justice. Rorschach is not just a protector. He is a morally ambiguous figure who confronts the darkness of the world head-on, unafraid to face the grim realities of human nature. His mask, which bears the inkblot pattern of Rorschach's psychological test, symbolizes the fragmented nature of justice and identity, reflecting the fractured state of society itself. Rorschach's vision of protection is not merely about safeguarding the physical world, but about confronting the psychological and moral decay that he perceives in society. The Night Watchman in Time's Watchman Times is no longer a simple guard. He is a deeply flawed hero who stands against a world of corruption, war, and fear. Rorschach's transformation from a mere vigilante to a symbolic figure of moral absolutism highlights another key element of the modern Watchman: his function as a reflection of society's deeper anxieties. The Night Watchman, in this case, represents the fear that society is on the brink of collapse, that the lines between good and evil have become blurred, and that the systems in place to protect us are inadequate. Rorschach's vigilant stance and his refusal to compromise make him a tragic hero, a figure who embodies the consequences of living in a world where protection comes at a personal cost. The archetype of the Watchman has also influenced other popular films and television series, from Time's Batman Times to Time's The Dark Knight Times trilogy, where Gotham's protector, Bruce Wayne, takes on the mantle of the Night Watchman to safeguard his city from crime, corruption, and an ever-growing sense of moral ambiguity. Batman's nocturnal vigilance, his constant watch over a city that never sleeps, echoes the ancient Watchman's duty to protect the community. Yet, as in Time's Watchman Asterisk, Batman is not a simple hero. He is a complex, psychologically driven character whose methods of protection often raise questions about justice, morality, and personal sacrifice. Like the night watchman of old, Batman's presence is a reminder that darkness and danger are not just external threats, but internal ones, fears that are reflected in the very fabric of the society he protects. The modern-day watchman, whether portrayed as a superhero, a vigilante, or a supernatural guardian, continues to resonate with contemporary audiences because he embodies our enduring desire to protect ourselves from the unseen, the unknown, and the uncontrollable. These characters stand as symbols of vigilance, acting as the first line of defense against the encroaching darkness that we cannot fully understand or defeat. They are not merely men with lanterns, they are the embodiments of our collective fear and our collective hope. The night watchman's duty, much like the world he inhabits, has grown more complicated, more nuanced, and more symbolic, yet his core function remains the same: to stand between the known and the unknown, to protect us from what lurks in the shadows. As we look at the night watchman's evolution in film, it's clear that the figure is not just a relic of ancient times, but a symbol that continues to evolve in the context of modern fears and desires. Whether through characters like Rorschach, Batman, or even the supernatural guardians of films like Time's Night Watch **, the Watchman remains a timeless figure, one who stands vigilant in the face of an ever-changing world. Having explored the transformation of the Night Watchman in film and popular media, we now shift to examining how this archetype continues to resonate in the collective psyche. In the next section, we will explore the deeper symbolic meanings of the Watchman, reflecting on why this figure continues to captivate us across time, from ancient villages to modern cities. The Night Watchman is more than just a figure standing in the dark. He is a reflection of our deepest fears, our need for protection, and our desire to face the unknown. At its core, the archetype of the Night Watchman embodies humanity's eternal struggle with the unknown. He is not just a physical guardian of the village or the city. He represents something far deeper: our fear of what we cannot see, our desire to keep the darkness at bay, and our ever-present need to feel safe in an uncertain world. The Watchman symbolizes vigilance, sacrifice, and the precarious balance between safety and danger. His role is a reminder that the world is full of invisible threats, forces beyond our control that can only be confronted by those brave enough to stand guard, even when no one else is watching. In its many forms, the Night Watchman is a cultural symbol, a figure whose presence stretches beyond mere protection. He represents the philosophical idea of moral duty, standing in the dark and facing the dangers of the unknown with unwavering commitment. This is a figure who sacrifices rest and peace for the sake of others, who faces isolation in the name of protection, and whose very presence is a reminder that, even when we feel safe, there are always forces lurking just out of sight. The Watchman is not just guarding the village, he is guarding against existential fears, the dark corners of human consciousness that we prefer not to confront. In many ways, the Watchman's duty is an ongoing battle with the dark parts of ourselves, our anxieties, our uncertainties, and our susceptibility to fear. The archetype has evolved over time, but its symbolic significance remains remarkably consistent. In both ancient times and modern culture, the Watchman embodies the tension between security and danger. He is a protector, but also a reflection of isolation and loneliness, standing apart from the world he seeks to protect. There is a deep philosophical resonance in this isolation, much like the human condition, where individuals must often stand alone in the face of fear and uncertainty. The Watchman is an existential figure, a constant reminder that safety comes at a cost, that protection requires sacrifice, and that, ultimately, the darkness will always be there, just beyond the light. In modern culture, the Night Watchman continues to serve as a powerful symbol of the struggle against forces we cannot fully understand or control. Whether he appears in literature, film, or as a metaphor for our own fears, the Watchman represents the idea that vigilance, sacrifice, and courage are required to navigate the unknown. He is not simply a figure of physical protection, but a symbol of the resilience needed to confront the invisible and the uncertain. His legacy endures because it speaks to something primal within us, the desire to face the darkness, to stand guard against the unknown, and to protect what we hold dear. As we move into the final chapter, we will explore how this enduring symbol of the Night Watchman continues to shape modern society. From cultural representations to the practical implications of vigilance in daily life, we will see how the Watchman's legacy lives on, not just as a figure of myth, but as a guiding force in our ongoing struggle for security and understanding. Though the night watchman no longer walks alone under the stars, the need for something to protect us in the dark still echoes in the very systems we trust today. In the modern world, the role of the night watchman has evolved in response to technological advancements, but its essence remains the same: vigilance, protection, and the desire to guard against the unknown. The human need for security, whether from physical threats, psychological fears, or unseen dangers, has not diminished with time. The traditional image of a solitary figure walking the streets, lantern in hand, may seem like a relic of the past, but the fundamental concept of guarding the night persists in contemporary society, albeit in new and often invisible forms. Today, the night watchman's duties are carried out by a wide array of professionals who serve as our modern-day protectors. Security guards patrol office buildings, shopping centres, and private properties, ensuring that everything remains safe during the dark hours. Police officers, too, continue the watchman's role, walking the streets and responding to emergencies, but their presence is more systematic, often supported by technology that allows for broader surveillance and quicker response times. The shift from human guards to automated systems, such as surveillance cameras, alarms, and motion sensors, may seem like a departure from the past, but in many ways, these technological advancements are simply extensions of the same fundamental duty that the night watchman once performed: to watch, to protect, and to prevent the unknown from breaching our walls. Surveillance systems, in particular, have become a critical component of modern security infrastructure. From the ubiquitous presence of cameras on street corners to the increasingly sophisticated systems in our homes, think of smart doorbells, motion sensors, and neighborhood watch apps, the desire for constant vigilance has found a new, digital expression. Though these systems no longer require a human to stand in the cold or watch through the night, they still serve the same purpose: to create a sense of safety by constantly monitoring the environment for potential threats. This shift from human guards to automated systems speaks to a larger societal shift toward efficiency, but it also speaks to a psychological need. People are comforted by the idea that their homes, businesses, and even public spaces are under constant watch, even when no one is physically present to see the danger. However, while the technology is advanced and efficient, it does not entirely replace the human need for protection. The night watchman's legacy is not just about physical security, it's about the comfort of knowing that someone or something is watching over us. The presence of a human figure, a symbol of vigilance and sacrifice, carries with it an emotional resonance that automated systems cannot replicate. It's why many people still prefer to have security guards in places like malls or offices, despite the presence of security cameras. We seek human-like protection, not just efficiency, because the desire for safety is deeply psychological. The night watchman's human qualities, his willingness to stand alone, to face the unknown, and to act as a guardian are traits that people still value, even in a world increasingly dominated by technology. Moreover, the concept of the night watchman is not limited to private security. It extends into the fabric of our social structures as well. Neighborhood watch programs, which rely on community members volunteering their time to monitor their neighborhoods, embody the same spirit of vigilance. Though these programs are often less formal and less reliant on technology, they are still a reflection of the ancient need for guardianship. In these programs, neighbors take on the mantle of the night watchman, standing guard over their own communities, ensuring that everyone feels safe and protected. The desire to protect what is ours, to maintain order, and to confront the unknown dangers that exist just beyond the visible world is as strong as ever, and these programs are a modern manifestation of that timeless need. What's particularly striking in today's world is how these modern equivalents of the night watchman have become more sophisticated and integrated into the fabric of urban life. In large cities, for instance, surveillance systems are often linked to centralized monitoring stations, allowing real-time responses to potential threats. This level of technological integration has made the concept of vigilance more seamless, less obtrusive, and more pervasive than ever before. And yet, even in this digital age, there is still a fundamental reliance on the symbolic idea of the watchman. The presence of an ever-watchful eye, even if it's not a human figure, provides a psychological reassurance. We know we are being watched, and that knowledge in itself can deter threats, whether they are physical or psychological. In contrast to the traditional night watchman who might have patrolled streets alone, these modern systems create a sense of ubiquitous surveillance. The watchman is now a collective force, an interconnected web of sensors, data collectors, and security professionals working in tandem to ensure that we are safe. While it's easy to focus on the technological efficiency of these systems, we must not lose sight of the deeper psychological role they play. Much like the ancient watchman, these modern systems serve as a symbol, a constant reminder that, despite the uncertainties of the world, there are forces in place to protect us. The evolution of the watchman figure, from a solitary human figure to a network of security technologies, reflects not just the progress of society, but the persistence of a deep, fundamental human need. Even as we increasingly rely on automated systems, the idea of vigilance, the watchful eye in the darkness, remains central to our sense of safety. The night watchman may no longer walk alone under the stars, but his legacy lives on in the systems and professionals we trust today to keep us safe. From the present-day equivalents of the night watchman, we now move to examine how this need for protection has influenced the architecture and design of modern cities, creating spaces built for security and order. This reflection will reveal how ancient fears still echo in the spaces we live, work, and move through, influencing everything from city planning to social structures. Even in the sprawling cities of today, where skyscrapers rise above the streets, the ancient need for safety still shapes how we build our world, just like the watchman once did for villages long forgotten. The evolution of cities from small, defensible settlements to sprawling metropolises reflects an enduring cultural obsession with safety and the protection of the unknown. In the past, watchtowers, city walls, and fortifications were designed to ensure that threats from the outside were kept at bay, and in many ways, modern urban design continues to follow these principles of security. The need for vigilance, for safeguarding against the unseen dangers, has permeated the very fabric of our cities. Whether through gated communities, surveillance cameras, or the very layout of urban spaces, the legacy of the night watchman is alive and well in the design of the places where we live and work. In ancient villages and cities, walls were often the first and most visible symbol of protection. Watchtowers dotted the landscape, allowing sentinels to spot any incoming threats from miles away. The placement of these fortifications was intentional, with strategic locations chosen to provide maximum visibility and control. The idea of controlling access to a space, of having a watchman who could see and monitor all entry points, remains a critical feature of modern cities. Though the materials have changed from stone walls to high-tech security systems, the underlying purpose remains the same: to safeguard the community from harm. Modern cities, despite their complexity, still rely on similar principles of security. Gated communities have become an increasingly common feature of urban life, providing a physical barrier that creates a sense of safety and control. These gated neighborhoods are not just about aesthetics or privacy. They are rooted in an ancient desire to keep the outside world potential threats at a distance. The presence of physical barriers, like gates, fences, and walls, is a direct descendant of the ancient fortifications that protected villages from invaders. In some ways, these gated communities are modern-day watchtowers, where the boundaries are carefully monitored to prevent intrusion. In addition to these physical barriers, urban planning today also places significant emphasis on surveillance and visibility. Streetlights, for example, are strategically placed to ensure that public spaces are well lit, reducing the cover of darkness where threats could hide. The role of lighting in urban spaces is a direct descendant of the watchman's lantern, which once illuminated the streets to protect the community from unseen dangers. Today, streetlights not only make public areas safer, but also send a symbolic message that someone, something, is watching. The light, much like the watchman's vigilant presence, is a reminder that the unknown is being kept at bay, that safety is being ensured, even in the most public of spaces. Surveillance systems, including cameras and monitoring stations, have become an integral part of the modern city. These systems mirror the night watchman's duty to observe and protect, except now the watchman is not a person, but a network of cameras, sensors, and monitoring stations that provide real-time data on what is happening in public spaces. Cities like London, with its extensive network of CCTV cameras, have effectively transformed public spaces into monitored areas where safety is maintained through constant surveillance. The presence of cameras creates a sense of security, but also serves as a constant reminder of vigilance. mirroring the watchman's role in watching over the community to ensure its safety. This technological extension of the night watchman's role has evolved the figure from a human guardian to a ubiquitous, electronic presence that watches over every corner of the city, day and night. The layout of urban spaces themselves also reflects the ancient drive for safety. Modern city planners often consider crime prevention when designing public spaces. Concepts like crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, emphasize how the physical environment can influence crime and safety. For example, the placement of parks, sidewalks, and even the design of buildings is often done with security in mind, ensuring that no area is left isolated or obscured from view. Open, visible spaces discourage criminal activity by ensuring that people are always within sight of others, much like the watchman who stood in a public square, his eyes scanning the surroundings. This idea of eyes on the street, as coined by urban planner Jane Jacobs, aligns directly with the principles of vigilance that governed the watchman's role. By fostering environments where people are naturally surveilled by others, cities create a network of informal watchmen who contribute to the safety of the community. Yet, even as cities are designed with safety in mind, there is an underlying tension between security and freedom. The more we build cities that are designed to be secure, gated communities, surveillance systems, well-lit streets, the more we grapple with the question of how much control we are willing to relinquish in exchange for that security. The desire to protect ourselves from the unknown is deeply ingrained in human nature, but the structures we build to ensure safety can also create feelings of confinement or surveillance, leading to concerns about privacy and autonomy. The ancient watchmen guarded against physical threats, but modern cities often ask us to protect against the psychological and societal forces of control, fear, and freedom. The influence of the night watchman's legacy is visible not only in physical structures, but in the very mindset of how we view our safety. While the role of the watchman may no longer be fulfilled by a single human figure walking the streets at night, the concept of vigilance continues to inform how we live, how we design our cities, and how we interact with the world around us. The city has become a modern-day fortification, with surveillance, barriers, and lighting serving as the watchman's tools, ensuring that the darkness, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, does not overwhelm us. In the next section, we will examine how this cultural obsession with security affects the individual psyche in our daily lives, exploring the balance between safety and freedom in a world that is constantly being watched. This will provide insight into how the desire for protection from the unknown continues to influence both our collective experiences and personal freedoms. In a world where safety is increasingly guaranteed by surveillance and control, the question remains, are we truly free, or have we simply traded our autonomy for a sense of security we can never fully trust? The tension between safety and personal freedom has been a constant theme throughout history, from the watchman guarding the village gates to the highly monitored cities of today. In the modern world, this conflict plays out in the delicate balance between our desire for protection and the price we pay in terms of privacy, autonomy, and freedom. The more vigilant we become in ensuring our safety, whether through surveillance technology, law enforcement, or community-based security systems, the more control we surrender to institutions and systems designed to protect us. The legacy of the night watchman, once a solitary figure standing guard, has evolved into a broader, more complex system of surveillance, security measures, and societal structures that, while offering protection, also foster a growing sense of unease. The psychological toll of this constant vigilance cannot be understated. The watchman's job was once simple: protect the village from external threats. But today, in a world of ubiquitous surveillance, the role of the watchman has expanded to include monitoring every aspect of our lives: where we go, who we communicate with, what we buy, and even what we search for online. This heightened sense of observation creates a paradox. While it may provide a sense of security, it also breeds a deeper anxiety about what is being watched, what is being controlled, and what we are giving up in exchange for this protection. The more we rely on surveillance systems and security technologies to keep us safe, the more we surrender our freedom to the watchful eyes that are always present, but often unseen. In many modern societies, the constant presence of cameras, drones, and data collection systems serves as a reminder that we are always being observed. Whether it's the security cameras in public spaces, the apps that track our every movement, or the smart devices in our homes listening for our commands, we live in a world where privacy is increasingly eroded in the name of safety. While these systems may deter crime or protect us from danger, they also introduce a chilling question. At what cost do we obtain this security? Have we traded too much of our freedom for the illusion of safety? And if we are constantly monitored, are we still free to move about our lives? Or have we become prisoners to the systems designed to protect us? This paradox is most evident in the rise of the surveillance state, where law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and even private companies have access to vast amounts of personal data. The more security measures are implemented, the more people begin to feel that their actions are being watched, recorded, and stored. The night watchman, in this modern context, is not just an individual looking out for external threats. He has become an omnipresent force, watching over society with technologies that provide protection, but also strip away the very privacy that many hold dear. The question is no longer simply whether we feel safe, it is whether the trade-off for that safety is worth it. This tension between security and freedom has deep roots in modern political and philosophical debates. As governments increase their surveillance capabilities, the line between protecting citizens and infringing on their rights becomes increasingly blurred. Many argue that the erosion of privacy and the expansion of surveillance are necessary sacrifices in an era of global terrorism and digital threats. Yet, this comes with a cost, a growing sense of vulnerability and the fear that personal freedoms are being curtailed in the name of security. In some ways, we have become the watchmen of our own existence, constantly monitoring ourselves and each other, constantly aware that our movements and actions are being tracked. The psychological impact of living in this state of constant vigilance is profound. Studies have shown that the knowledge of being watched can lead to a decrease in individual autonomy, as people begin to modify their behavior to align with what is deemed socially acceptable or safe. In societies where surveillance is omnipresent, individuals may feel compelled to act in certain ways, limit their actions, and even censor their thoughts to avoid drawing attention. This self-policing behavior erodes the freedom to think and act freely, a cornerstone of personal liberty that has been valued for centuries. As cities and nations continue to implement higher levels of security, the balance between safety and freedom becomes ever more delicate. We are left to ask, is the constant monitoring we endure truly keeping us safe, or is it simply fostering a different kind of fear, a fear of losing our personal autonomy in exchange for a sense of security that is never fully guaranteed? The watchman of the past stood as a visible figure, guarding the village from threats he could see and understand. Today, we are surrounded by an invisible force, a network of surveillance and security measures that aim to protect us from dangers we can barely comprehend. But in doing so, they also make us question whether we are truly free. This tension between safety and freedom reflects broader societal implications that extend beyond surveillance. As we move forward, we must ask how this growing security culture affects our daily lives, our relationships, and our sense of self. How do we reconcile our desire for protection with the fear of losing our freedoms? These questions set the stage for exploring how the need for safety and protection continues to shape individual behavior and social dynamics in the modern world. Having examined the trade-off between safety and freedom, we will now explore the psychological and societal impact of living under constant vigilance, how people internalize the need for protection, and whether it shapes their everyday behavior and social structures. This exploration will provide deeper insight into how our fear of the unknown and the systems created to protect us from it continue to influence modern life. We are safer than ever before, yet the fear of what's out there in the dark, both real and imagined, still governs our lives. How did our need for protection become our greatest source of anxiety? Human beings have always been driven by a deep-seated need to protect themselves from the unknown, a fear that dates back to our earliest ancestors. Just as the night watchman once stood vigilant at the gates of ancient villages, we continue to feel the pull of this instinct to guard ourselves against unseen threats. Even in today's highly advanced, seemingly secure world, this primal fear still influences our behavior, often in ways we don't fully understand. The need for safety has grown into a cultural obsession, one that sometimes leaves us more anxious than secure. The concept of security anxiety perfectly encapsulates this modern dilemma. Security anxiety refers to the discomfort and fear that arise when people are unsure of their safety, even when there is no immediate or tangible threat. In many ways, this anxiety stems from the same sources that drove ancient societies to build walls, fortifications, and watchtowers: the fear of the unknown. Today, this fear is amplified by the pervasive presence of surveillance systems, technological monitoring, and constant access to information about potential dangers, real or imagined. While we are living in the safest era in history, with crime rates declining in many places and health advancements offering greater protection than ever before, our perception of danger has shifted. Instead of worrying about the physical threats that once dominated human survival, we now fear more abstract dangers: cyber attacks, terrorism, privacy violations, and environmental catastrophes. The unknown is no longer just outside our walls, it's in the digital ether, invisible yet omnipresent. This shift in the nature of threats has made it harder for us to feel truly safe, even when statistics tell us we are. Constant surveillance, whether through security cameras, smartphones, or data collection systems, has only intensified this sense of vulnerability. Although these measures are intended to protect us, they also create an ever-present reminder that we are always being watched. This constant monitoring leads to heightened levels of anxiety, as individuals feel the pressure of being under surveillance, even when they haven't done anything wrong. Research has shown that this always-on environment can cause a sense of powerlessness and stress, as people are constantly reminded that their privacy and autonomy are being compromised in the name of security. Psychologically, the drive for safety, once embodied by the night watchman, has become a pervasive force in modern life. It shapes how we build our cities, how we structure our social lives, and even how we interact with one another. The desire for protection has morphed into a collective anxiety about the unknown one that we often struggle to manage. While technology and security measures provide a sense of safety, they also increase our fear of the things we cannot control, leading us to prioritize security over well-being. As we transition from the psychological impact of constant vigilance, the next section will explore the future of the night watchman's role. How will this figure evolve as technology, culture, and society continue to develop in response to new challenges? This question will lead us into a deeper look at how our understanding of protection will change in the coming decades. In the future, the night watchman may not be a person standing guard, but a machine watching over us with unblinking eyes. Are we ready for a world where our protectors are no longer human? The role of the night watchman, once defined by human vigilance and sacrifice, is rapidly evolving in response to technological advancements. As artificial intelligence, AI, robotics, and automation become more sophisticated, the traditional figure of the watchman is being replaced by intelligent systems designed to patrol our streets, monitor our homes, and predict potential threats. The shift from human guards to machine-based protectors is already underway, with security companies deploying drones, robots, and AI-driven surveillance networks to ensure public safety. But while these technological replacements offer numerous advantages, efficiency, increased coverage, and the ability to work around the clock without rest, they also raise critical questions about privacy, trust, and the human touch in security. One of the most visible signs of this shift can be seen in the rise of autonomous security drones. These machines are capable of patrolling vast areas, flying over neighborhoods or businesses, scanning for any signs of suspicious activity. Equipped with cameras, motion sensors, and even thermal imaging, drones can monitor places that are difficult or impossible for human guards to reach. The advantages are clear: drones don't tire, they can cover more ground, and they can operate in dangerous or inaccessible environments. In large urban areas, drones could become the modern-day equivalent of the night watchman, hovering in the sky, ever vigilant, with eyes that never blink. Similarly, robotic security patrols are becoming more common. These robots, often designed to resemble futuristic sentinels, can patrol parking lots, office buildings, and other public spaces, moving autonomously and alerting human security personnel if they detect any irregularities. Unlike their human predecessors, these robots are not subject to fatigue or distractions. They can process large amounts of data in real time and respond instantly to any detected threat, whether it's a trespasser, a fire, or a security breach. AI-powered surveillance systems take this one step further. With the ability to analyze vast amounts of data from cameras, sensors, and even social media, AI systems can predict potential threats before they happen. These systems can identify suspicious behavior patterns, track individuals across multiple locations, and even intervene in real time, notifying authorities before a crime is committed. The use of AI in predictive policing is becoming more widespread, with some cities already experimenting with AI-driven algorithms that forecast where crimes are most likely to occur, allowing law enforcement to intervene proactively. The benefits of these technological replacements are undeniable. Machines are more efficient, can work tirelessly without breaks, and can respond faster than humans ever could. But with these advances come profound ethical and societal questions. First and foremost, there's the issue of privacy. The more we rely on AI and surveillance technology to protect us, the more we expose ourselves to constant monitoring. The watchman of tomorrow may not be a friendly figure standing in the shadows, but an omnipresent machine that watches us at all times, recording every movement, analyzing every action. What does it mean for personal freedom when the line between protection and surveillance becomes blurred? Furthermore, there's the loss of human connection. The night watchman was more than just a protector, he was a figure of trust, someone who could be counted on to stand guard, a presence that offered comfort in times of fear. With machines taking over this role, there is the potential for a growing sense of detachment. A robotic guard may be efficient, but can it offer the same sense of reassurance as a human? Can a machine understand the complexities of human behavior, the nuances of threat detection that go beyond algorithmic prediction? And perhaps most troubling of all, how do we trust a machine to protect us when we don't fully understand how it makes its decisions, or how it might evolve in ways that we cannot control? The watchman of tomorrow may be faster, more efficient, and able to predict threats with terrifying precision, but in doing so, we must confront the question of whether we are ready to place our safety in the hands of machines. While the technological advancements are undeniable, they come with the risk of losing something essential: the human element that once made the night watchman a symbol of trust, sacrifice, and protection. Are we willing to give up the human connection for the sake of convenience and security? As we move from the potential of AI and robotics in security, we must also consider the societal and ethical implications of this shift. The question is not only about the efficiency of these new systems, but about how they shape our relationships with each other, with authority, and with the very concept of safety. How much control are we willing to give up in exchange for the promise of protection? And what does this mean for our personal freedoms? These are the questions we must grapple with as we move into an era where the night watchman may no longer be a man, but a machine. From here, we will explore the broader societal and ethical concerns that arise from replacing human guardians with AI and automation. As we examine the future of the night watchman, we'll consider the deeper implications of trust, control, and the loss of personal connection in an increasingly automated world. In a world where AI watches over us and surveillance permeates every corner of our lives, the question isn't just about safety, it's about what we're willing to give up in the name of protection. As society continues to evolve with the rapid advancement of technology, we find ourselves at a critical juncture, one where the balance between security and personal freedom is being tested in unprecedented ways. The watchman, once a human figure standing guard against tangible threats, is now increasingly being replaced by machines, AI, and surveillance systems that watch over us with unblinking eyes. While these technologies promise to enhance safety and security, they also raise complex ethical questions about privacy, freedom, and autonomy. The ethics of using AI and surveillance systems as modern-day watchmen involves a delicate balancing act. On one hand, these technologies provide an invaluable service. They monitor public spaces, predict criminal activity, prevent accidents, and protect vulnerable individuals. For instance, AI-powered surveillance systems can identify suspicious behavior in real time, alerting law enforcement to potential threats before they escalate. Drones can monitor areas too dangerous for human security officers, and data collection systems can predict potential emergencies based on patterns and trends. In many ways, these advancements offer the promise of a safer, more secure world, one where danger is identified and addressed before it becomes a problem. However, this same technology comes with profound ethical dilemmas. The question at the heart of the issue is how much of our personal lives we are willing to sacrifice for the sake of security. In a world where nearly every aspect of our lives can be monitored, where facial recognition systems scan our faces in public places, where our movements are tracked by smartphones, And where every digital transaction is logged, the question arises, how much privacy are we willing to relinquish to feel safe? The most immediate concern is the erosion of privacy. As AI systems and surveillance technologies become more sophisticated, they have the potential to record every detail of our daily lives. What we buy, where we go, who we interact with, and even what we think, are all data points that can be collected, stored, and analyzed. This data, often gathered without our knowledge or consent, has immense power, and it is controlled by governments, corporations, and even malicious actors who may seek to use it for purposes that infringe on our autonomy. Government surveillance programs, like those carried out by intelligence agencies or law enforcement, are among the most contentious aspects of modern surveillance. While these systems are justified in the name of national security, aiming to protect citizens from terrorism or crime, there is a growing fear that they infringe upon civil liberties, particularly the right to privacy. The debate over mass data collection, such as that revealed by whistleblowers like Edward Snowden, raises questions about how much control we are willing to cede to governments in exchange for the promise of protection. As more governments around the world adopt surveillance technologies, the risk of unchecked power becomes ever more real. Without proper oversight, these systems could be used to monitor dissent, suppress free speech, or target marginalized communities. Beyond government monitoring, there is the issue of corporate surveillance. Companies track our online behavior, purchasing habits, and even our emotional responses through algorithms designed to predict our desires and control our choices. This data is often collected without explicit consent, and it is frequently sold or shared with other corporations, fueling a data-driven economy where privacy becomes a commodity. While some of this surveillance is used to offer convenience, personalized ads, tailored shopping experiences, it also raises concerns about manipulation, exploitation, and the commodification of personal information. In a world where data is power, the line between protection and control becomes increasingly difficult to discern. The reliance on automated systems for security also introduces a troubling paradox. While technology promises to make us safer, it also fosters a sense of helplessness. Machines, no matter how intelligent, cannot replace the human intuition, empathy, and moral judgment that are essential to true protection. An AI system may be able to identify patterns of suspicious behavior, but it cannot assess the context in which these behaviors occur. It cannot account for the nuances of human interaction or the complexities of motivation. In this sense, the increasing automation of security threatens to reduce us to mere data points, devoid of the individual agency that defines our autonomy. This raises another ethical concern: the loss of human connection. The night watchman, once a figure of trust and vigilance, offered not just protection, but a human presence. His watchfulness embodied the idea of shared responsibility for the community, and he was a reassuring figure who connected with those he protected. Today, as AI and surveillance systems replace human guards, we lose that personal touch. While machines may provide efficiency and convenience, they cannot offer the comfort of human judgment, nor the empathy needed to navigate complex social dynamics. In many ways, the shift to machine-driven protection represents a move away from community-based safety, where people look out for one another, to a model based on monitoring and control, where people are watched but not understood. Ultimately, the ethical dilemmas surrounding AI and surveillance systems hinge on trust. Trust in the institutions that implement these systems, trust in the machines that perform the surveillance, and trust in the ability of society to maintain a balance between security and personal freedom. How much control are we willing to surrender to ensure our safety? And can we trust the systems that are built to protect us, especially when they lack the human qualities that have long defined the role of the night watchman? As we continue to embrace technology to protect us, we must consider these questions carefully. The future of the watchman, and indeed of security itself, may depend on our ability to navigate these ethical challenges. We must ask, can we trust the machines to keep us safe without losing the very freedoms that make us human? In the next section, we will explore how the role of the night watchman may continue to evolve in the face of these challenges, examining whether the human element will ever be fully replaced by machines, or if there will always be a place for human guardians in the world of tomorrow. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, there is one thing the machines will never replace: the human touch, the presence of a watchman who cares enough to protect, not just with eyes, but with heart. As AI and robotics continue to redefine the landscape of security, One might be tempted to think that the role of human watchmen, those who once stood guard against tangible threats, will become obsolete. Drones patrol the skies, surveillance cameras blanket our streets, and predictive algorithms can assess threats before they manifest. Yet, despite these technological advancements, there is something uniquely human about the act of vigilance, something that no machine can replicate. The presence of a human guardian who not only observes but understands, who not only monitors but empathizes. The human desire for connection and trust in another person's watchfulness cannot be easily replaced by machines. Safety is not just about surveillance, it's about empathy, understanding, and shared responsibility. While technology may offer efficiency, it lacks the emotional depth and moral judgment that come with human involvement in protection. The act of standing guard over a community, of watching over those who are vulnerable, is deeply tied to human interaction. We rely not just on the physical security that a guard provides, but on the trust we place in them, the knowledge that someone is there, not because they are programmed to be, but because they care. In communities around the world, human security personnel continue to play a vital role. Neighborhood watch groups, for example, have seen a resurgence in many areas, despite the rise of surveillance technology. These grassroots organizations rely on the collective responsibility of individuals who choose to look out for their neighbors, often in ways that go beyond mere protection. They provide emotional reassurance, a sense of solidarity, and a connection that technology cannot offer. In these small, community-based efforts, the watchman is still a living, breathing person, someone who has a personal stake in the well-being of the people around them. Similarly, in smaller towns and rural areas, the role of the human watchman is still essential. Police officers, security personnel, and even volunteer patrols are not just performing a job, they are part of the fabric of the community. These individuals engage with their neighbors, understand their unique concerns, and offer more than just physical security. They provide peace of mind. The trust that comes with knowing someone is watching over you, someone who is invested in your safety and your community's well-being, is a powerful thing that technology simply cannot replace. Even in larger cities, human involvement in security is still crucial. While AI and automated systems may assist in monitoring and protecting large areas, it is human security personnel who respond in times of crisis, offering judgment, compassion, and the ability to navigate complex situations that go beyond what a machine can understand. In many cases, the presence of a human officer or security guard in a building or on the streets provides more than just a deterrent to crime. It fosters a sense of trust. People feel safer, not because a machine is watching them, but because they know there is someone there who can help, who can intervene when things go wrong, and who understands the nuances of human behavior. The re-emergence of human watchmen in certain contexts, such as community policing or local security, highlights the enduring need for human vigilance. As cities grow larger and more impersonal, the desire for personal connection and trust in one's protector becomes more pronounced. People don't just want to be safe, they want to feel safe. This feeling of safety is tied not just to the presence of cameras or sensors, but to the presence of a person, someone who offers reassurance, someone who embodies the community's shared responsibility for protection. While technology can predict patterns, monitor spaces, and detect anomalies, it cannot engage in the way a human watchman does. The emotional intelligence required to assess a situation, to understand the motivations behind actions, and to make decisions in the heat of the moment is something machines have yet to master. It's the human element, our empathy, our judgment, and our moral compass that makes us irreplaceable when it comes to protecting others. Technology may augment our capabilities, but it will never replace the need for human guardianship, especially in times of uncertainty. This is why, even in a world dominated by technology, there will always be a place for human involvement in the role of the watchman. The essence of vigilance, whether carried out by a human or a machine, is rooted in our collective need for safety, a need that cannot be fully fulfilled by technology alone. The night watchman of tomorrow may be assisted by AI and robotics, but the human element will always remain a crucial part of the equation. Machines may be able to watch, but humans are the ones who understand, who act, and who care. As we move into the final reflections on the enduring legacy of the night watchman, we will consider how the essence of vigilance will continue to evolve in the face of technological advancements, but always with an awareness that, at its heart, protection is about more than just surveillance. It's about connection, trust, and a shared responsibility for keeping one another safe. As the world changes, one truth remains: we all need a watchman, not just for protection, but for the deep-seated need to confront the darkness together. Throughout history, the figure of the night watchman has evolved, adapting to the changing landscapes of society, technology, and human need. From the solitary figure standing guard in ancient villages to the complex networks of surveillance systems monitoring our modern cities, the watchman has transformed in form and function. Yet, beneath all these shifts, one core element remains unchanged: the fundamental human need for protection. The watchman, in his various incarnations, is a timeless symbol of vigilance, security, and trust, the embodiment of our collective desire to confront the unknown. The night watchman's role, whether performed by a human or an automated system, speaks to a deeper psychological truth about the human condition. We are vulnerable, and we are afraid of what lurks in the darkness, both physical and metaphorical. This fear, whether it's the threat of invasion, crime, or more intangible concerns like existential dread or societal collapse, has driven humanity to seek protection in countless forms. From ancient civilizations, where watchtowers and fortifications guarded villages against external threats, to today's digital surveillance networks that monitor our every move, the role of the watchman has been one of constant evolution in response to the dangers we perceive. The ancient watchman stood at the gates of a village, lantern in hand, scanning the dark for any sign of intrusion. His role was simple, yet essential. He was the first line of defense against the unknown. His presence offered not just physical security, but psychological reassurance. The villagers knew they were not alone, that someone was standing guard, someone was there to confront the threats they could not see. Today, even though the watchman's duties have shifted from physical patrols to digital monitoring, the psychological need for that presence endures. Modern surveillance systems, drones, and AI technologies may be more efficient, but they lack the human element that provided the villagers with a sense of connection and trust. Even in an era of advanced technology, the desire for human vigilance, someone who sees, someone who understands, someone who cares, is still deeply ingrained in our psyche. As we have seen, the figure of the watchman persists not just in security, but as a cultural and psychological symbol. In folklore, literature, and modern media, the watchman represents more than just a physical guard. He is the protector against chaos, the guardian who stands between safety and danger, light and darkness. Whether it is Batman, the vigilante hero watching over Gotham City, or the neighborhood watch volunteer keeping an eye out for trouble, the essence of the watchman transcends time. The watchman is a symbol of humanity's ongoing struggle with vulnerability and the unknown. He embodies the delicate balance between safety and fear, protection and control, vigilance and trust. However, as technology continues to develop and our methods of protection become more automated and sophisticated, we must ask, what happens to the human element in this equation? The night watchman, once a solitary figure, is increasingly replaced by systems that monitor, predict, and react to threats without the need for human intervention. While these advancements provide efficiency and security, they also raise profound questions about the role of human involvement in our protection. Can machines truly stand guard in the same way a human can? Do we trust a machine to protect us, or do we yearn for the personal touch, the human connection that comes with knowing someone is there, watching over us? At its core, the role of the night watchman is not just about guarding against physical threats, but about confronting the deeper fears that bind us together as a society. The watchman is a symbol of our collective vulnerability and our need for community. No matter how advanced technology becomes, the desire to protect one another and face the unknown together is universal. The watchman's duty is a shared responsibility, and it's through this sense of community, whether embodied by a human figure or a network of machines, that we find solace in an increasingly uncertain world. The psychological need for protection, the desire to know that someone is watching over us, will never disappear. As society continues to evolve, so too will the role of the watchman. Whether through human guardians or technological systems, the essence of vigilance and protection will endure. It is through this enduring legacy of the watchman that we confront the darkness together, not as isolated individuals, but as a collective, united by our shared need for safety, trust, and understanding. As we reflect on the symbolic importance of the watchman, we must consider the broader, philosophical implications of vigilance and protection. What does it mean for society when we rely on machines to keep us safe? And what does it mean when we turn to each other for that same protection? The role of the watchman, whether human or technological, will continue to evolve in the face of future challenges. The need for protection will never fade, but how we navigate the balance between safety and freedom, security and autonomy, will shape the future of vigilance for generations to come. In the next section, we will explore how this legacy will continue to shape our society, considering how our need for protection and the role of the watchman will evolve in the coming decades, driven by technological advancements, cultural shifts, and the constant need to confront the unknown. From the earliest days of humanity, the instinct to protect and guard against the unknown has been a matter of life or death. The night watchman was the human embodiment of that ancient drive. The need for vigilance is embedded deep within our psychology, a primal instinct shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressures. When we lock our doors at night, glance over our shoulder when walking alone, or check our surroundings in unfamiliar places, we are tapping into an ancient survival mechanism. This instinct to stay alert, to protect ourselves from potential danger, has been critical to human survival since the dawn of our species. In the context of early human life, safety was often a matter of life or death, whether from predators, rival tribes, or the unpredictable forces of nature. The night watchman, in all his forms, is a direct manifestation of this instinct, a reflection of the ever-present need to ensure our protection from the unknown. Our evolutionary history is rooted in the need for vigilance. In the wild, early humans were constantly at risk of being preyed upon by larger predators, and the threat of attack from other tribes or dangerous environmental conditions loomed large. To survive, early humans had to remain alert, constantly monitoring their surroundings for threats, even during times of rest. This was particularly crucial during the night, when darkness concealed potential dangers. The act of staying vigilant, keeping watch over one's surroundings, wasn't just a behavior, it was essential for survival. Those who were not vigilant, who grew complacent, were more likely to fall prey to the dangers lurking in the darkness. Evolutionary psychology offers key insights into why we continue to feel the need for vigilance, even in modern, secure environments. Our brains are wired to detect threats, and this survival brain is still active in contemporary life, even though the threats we face are not the same as those faced by our ancestors. The fight or flight response, triggered by perceived danger, is a remnant of our primal need for survival. The physical responses we experience, such as heightened alertness, a racing heart, or the urge to protect our space, are all echoes of our early ancestors' need to stay alive in the face of real and immediate dangers. This instinctive drive to protect ourselves and our communities has been externalized in the form of the night watchman. Historically, the figure of the watchman, whether in the form of a lone sentinel standing guard or a community effort, has served as a way to channel this instinct into organized vigilance. The night watchman, as a cultural symbol, represents this deeply ingrained need for safety in the darkness. In ancient societies, the watchman was more than just a physical protector. He was the embodiment of human instinct to guard against the unknown, the living manifestation of that deep-seated fear that something lurking in the shadows might harm us. This desire for protection is not just an individual one. Humans are social creatures, and our survival has always depended on the collective effort of the group. Early human tribes relied on cooperation, sharing resources, and protecting one another from external threats. Vigilance was a shared responsibility, and the figure of the watchman reflected this communal need for safety. Communities established roles for those tasked with standing guard, whether during the night or at other times of vulnerability. These roles ensured that every individual could rest assured, knowing that there was someone watching over them. In these early societies, the night watchman wasn't just protecting property or resources, but also the very fabric of the group's cohesion and survival. The watchman's role, in many ways, mirrors the broader human experience of managing fear. Our ancestors lived with constant threats, and their need to protect against the unknown extended far beyond the physical realm, to include fear of the unseen, the supernatural, and the mysterious forces of nature. Just as our ancestors kept watch for animals and hostile humans, they also kept watch for omens, spirits, and unseen forces that could disrupt the safety of their world. In this way, the night watchman became a symbolic figure of not just physical protection, but also of guarding against the intangible fears that have always haunted humanity. Today, this deeply ingrained instinct for vigilance is still a part of our daily lives. Though the predators and immediate dangers of the past no longer exist, our fear of the unknown remains just as strong, albeit manifested in different ways. The threats we face now are often abstract: terrorism, economic instability, environmental threats, and technological risks like cyber attacks. However, the underlying psychological need to stay alert, to be prepared for whatever may come, has not changed. The modern-day equivalents of the night watchman security cameras, alarm systems, and surveillance networks are simply an extension of the same evolutionary instincts that once kept our ancestors safe. Evolutionary psychology suggests that this desire for vigilance is tied to a fundamental human need for control over our environment and the unknown. In the past, being unaware of threats could lead to disaster, and today, this fear is reflected in our obsession with safety and security. Whether it's through technology or human effort, we continue to seek out ways to protect ourselves from both tangible and intangible dangers, driven by the same instincts that governed early human behavior. The night watchman's figure, whether in human or technological form, represents the desire to maintain control over our environment, to ensure that the darkness does not overtake us. While the nature of threats may have evolved, our psychological need for vigilance has remained constant. The night watchman's role, as a symbol of protection and vigilance, reflects a universal human desire to confront the unknown with strength and preparedness. In modern times, as we face new and abstract challenges, we continue to look for ways to safeguard our world, drawing on the same instinctual drive that has existed for millennia. Having explored the evolutionary roots of vigilance and the night watchman's role in addressing this primal need, we now turn our attention to how these deeply embedded instincts manifest in modern behaviors. From security obsessions to societal control, the fight against the unknown continues to shape contemporary life. In the next section, we will examine how these ancient impulses have influenced modern culture and daily behavior, and how they continue to drive our actions in an increasingly complex world. In an age where every corner is watched, we find ourselves more protected than ever before. But with that protection comes a new kind of vulnerability, one that haunts us in ways we can't fully understand. The human need for security has never been more pervasive than it is today. From surveillance cameras in every corner of our cities to the constant digital monitoring of our online activities, security measures are woven into the very fabric of modern life. These measures reflect a deep-seated obsession with safeguarding ourselves from the unknown, a drive that is as ancient as humanity itself. The modern equivalent of the night watchman is not just the security guard patrolling our streets, but the countless cameras, sensors, and algorithms that continuously monitor our every move. However, while these systems are designed to provide safety and control, they also expose a paradox. The more we secure our environment, the more we feel vulnerable, both physically and psychologically. This modern obsession with security isn't just about preventing physical threats, it's about creating a sense of control over our environment, of being able to predict and mitigate any danger before it manifests. Just as the night watchman of ancient times served as a figure of vigilance against the unknown, today's surveillance systems serve a similar function, to ensure that no threat goes unnoticed. Yet, unlike the watchman who provided a human presence, today's systems are cold, impersonal, and often invisible. The sense of safety they provide is more abstract, like a security blanket, always there, but never fully tangible. We can see the cameras, but we can't see the data, the algorithms, or the automated processes that are working behind the scenes. While we have never been safer in terms of physical security, crime rates are at historic lows in many areas, and technological innovations are constantly improving public safety. The emotional and psychological toll of living in a surveillance society is significant. Surveillance, both physical and digital, has become a constant force in our daily lives, and this omnipresent monitoring often leads to a sense of anxiety rather than reassurance. While we may feel safer, we also feel watched. This feeling of being under constant observation can lead to a kind of psychological dissonance. We are more protected than ever, yet we feel more vulnerable, as if the very systems designed to safeguard us also make us more susceptible to intrusion. This paradox of security culture is not just a matter of physical safety. It's a reflection of our deep-seated need for control. In a world where we have more access to information than ever before, we are constantly seeking ways to predict and prevent any threat, whether it's an intruder in our home, a potential terrorist attack, or even a cyber attack on our personal data. The modern watchman, in the form of surveillance systems and digital monitoring, provides us with a sense of control over our environment, as if by watching everything, we can anticipate the future and prevent harm. However, the more we rely on these systems, the more we start to question, are we truly in control? Or is this illusion of control creating a new vulnerability, one tied to the very systems that are supposed to protect us? As our dependence on security systems grows, so does the feeling that we are being stripped of our autonomy. The more we surveil, the less we trust. Trust becomes something that is increasingly placed in technology and institutions rather than in individuals or communities. The sense of connection we once had with our protectors, the human watchman who understood the nuances of our communities, is replaced by an impersonal technological network that watches without empathy, without understanding. The night watchman's role, once defined by trust and human presence, is now being replaced by systems that may provide security but can never offer the same level of human reassurance. This dynamic is not just a personal issue, it's a societal one. The pervasiveness of surveillance influences how we interact with each other and how we perceive our place within society. We are becoming more accustomed to the idea of being watched, but this constant observation can lead to a subtle shift in behavior. People begin to censor themselves, either consciously or unconsciously, knowing that their every move might be recorded. This societal shift creates a culture of compliance, where privacy becomes secondary to the perceived benefits of safety. In a world where every move is monitored, the space for personal freedom narrows, and with it, the essence of autonomy begins to fade. Despite these concerns, the culture of security continues to grow. As we embrace the promise of protection, we must confront the cost of that security. How much freedom, autonomy, and privacy are we willing to sacrifice in exchange for a sense of safety? The modern-day watchman, in the form of surveillance systems and predictive algorithms, may keep us safe, but it also forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the more we secure ourselves, the more we may feel trapped by the very systems designed to protect us. This paradox of security and vulnerability, freedom and control, forms the backdrop for a broader philosophical reflection on the future of vigilance. How will we continue to navigate the balance between safety and personal liberty in the face of rapidly advancing technology? In the next section, we will delve into the deeper implications of this cultural obsession with security, considering how the need for vigilance will evolve in the future, and how the role of the watchman, whether human or machine, will continue to change as society faces new challenges. As the world races toward a future of technology and automation, one question remains: will we ever be able to replace the human instinct to watch over one another? Or will the watchman, in some form, always stand between us and the darkness? The future of vigilance, protection, and security is on the cusp of transformation, driven by advancements in artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and even biotechnology. As machines become more capable, predicting threats before they happen, responding faster than humans ever could, and providing seamless surveillance, we may be tempted to think that the role of the human watchman is doomed to fade into obsolescence. After all, why rely on a human to stand guard when drones, AI, and automated systems can monitor 24/7 without rest or hesitation? Yet, despite the allure of these technological advances, there remains a fundamental truth about human nature. We crave connection, empathy, and trust. The role of the night watchman, with its human presence and judgment, is rooted in the deep psychological need for assurance that someone is watching out for us, that we are not alone in facing the unknown. No matter how sophisticated our machines become, they can never fully replicate this human instinct to care, to understand, and to protect. Looking ahead, it's likely that technology will continue to change our relationship with safety and surveillance. AI and drones will increasingly monitor our streets, our homes, and our personal data, making it easier to detect threats before they arise. Biotechnology might even augment human abilities, allowing us to predict and respond to danger with unprecedented speed. We may eventually find ourselves in a world where autonomous systems provide the majority of security, doing so with remarkable efficiency and accuracy. However, as powerful as these innovations will be, they cannot replace the human desire for connection and trust. The tangible presence of a protector, someone who can understand the nuances of a situation, make moral judgments, and offer emotional support, will likely remain a cornerstone of security, even in the face of technological advancements. Whether it's a police officer on the street, a neighbor watching over a vulnerable home, or a volunteer in a community watch program, humans will continue to play a vital role in safeguarding not just physical spaces, but the very fabric of society. In the end, while machines may take on a greater role in vigilance, the essence of the night watchman, the need to protect, to stand guard against the unknown, will endure. Technology may redefine how we interact with security, but it will never replace the primal drive to ensure our safety, to confront the darkness, and to look out for one another. The future of vigilance, it seems, will be one where human instinct and technological innovation work together to navigate the complexities of an ever-changing world. With this reflection on the future of vigilance, the documentary comes full circle, tying together the ancient role of the night watchman with modern and futuristic concepts of protection, security, and safety. As we move forward, the need to protect each other from both physical and psychological threats will remain as essential as ever. The night watchman, in some form, will continue to stand between us and the darkness, guiding us through the unknown. The night watchman was more than a figure standing guard in the dark. He was a mirror of his society's deepest fears, a symbol of what each culture valued most and feared most. Throughout history, the role of the night watchman has evolved, shaped by the unique values, fears, and needs of the society he served. At its core, the watchman was not merely a protector of physical spaces. He was an embodiment of a culture's anxieties and priorities, a reflection of the prevailing threats and values of the time. From the ancient watchmen of Greece and Rome to the medieval sentinels of Europe, the role of the watchman adapted to the shifting dynamics of each society, mirroring the tensions between order and chaos, security and vulnerability. In ancient civilizations, such as those in Greece and Rome, the night watchman's role was largely defined by the need to protect communities from external threats. These early watchmen were tasked with guarding against invasions, raids, and the unpredictable forces of nature. For societies that often faced military conflicts and territorial expansion, the night watchman represented a barrier against chaos, an embodiment of society's drive to protect itself from external forces. Roman cities, for example, had watchmen who patrolled the streets, not only to prevent crime, but to keep the peace during times of political upheaval and civil unrest. The watchman in these ancient cultures was not just a physical guard, he was a symbol of a society's commitment to maintaining order in the face of external and internal turbulence. As we move into the medieval period, the role of the night watchman shifted in response to the changing dynamics of law, governance, and social order. In feudal Europe, the night watchman became more directly tied to the tensions between law and disorder. With the rise of feudal systems and the breakdown of centralized authority, many villages and towns relied on local watchmen to maintain order in the absence of strong law enforcement. The medieval watchman was often seen as a moral and legal authority, entrusted with the dual roles of keeping the peace and protecting property. These night watchmen not only guarded against thieves and invaders, but were also responsible for patrolling the streets to ensure that the moral and social codes of the time were upheld. In cities like London, for instance, watchmen were tasked with ensuring that citizens abided by curfews, regulating public behavior, and even serving as a force of moral enforcement. In these medieval settings, the role of the night watchman was deeply intertwined with the social and political structures of the time. The watchman became a reflection of the community's fears of disorder and lawlessness, embodying the tension between maintaining a structured society and confronting the ever-present threat of chaos. The watchman's duties were not just physical, they were social and moral. In many ways, the figure of the watchman became a symbol of the precariousness of order, a reminder that safety, security, and civilization itself depended on the vigilance and cooperation of the community. The role of the night watchman continued to evolve as we moved into early modern societies. With the rise of centralized nation-states, professional police forces began to emerge, and the role of the night watchman gradually transitioned into the more formalized role of law enforcement officers. Yet, even in these more structured societies, the night watchman's legacy persisted, and his role continued to reflect society's relationship with power, protection, and security. The modern watchman, whether in the form of police officers, security guards, or surveillance systems, still represents the cultural need for protection against threats. But it is no longer just about guarding against the physical dangers of the world. It is also about navigating complex social dynamics, where security often collides with concerns about privacy, freedom, and control. The historical evolution of the night watchman reveals much about the values and anxieties of the societies that created him. From ancient civilizations that feared external threats to medieval communities that struggled with maintaining order in the absence of centralized authority, the night watchman has always served as a symbol of society's desire to protect itself. Whether in times of war, political upheaval, or social disorder, the watchman has been a physical manifestation of the cultural drive to ensure safety, to confront the darkness, and to maintain order against the unknown. This reflection on the historical roles of the night watchman serves as a backdrop for understanding the lasting impact these figures have had on modern institutions. As we look at the role of the watchman in contemporary society, we will explore how his legacy has shaped our present-day views on security, safety, and the complex dynamics of vigilance. The figure of the watchman continues to evolve, but at its core, it remains a reflection of humanity's ongoing struggle to confront and manage the unknown, whether through human presence, technological systems, or societal structures. Having explored the historical roles of the watchman, the next section will reflect on the lasting impact of these figures on modern institutions and how they continue to shape our understanding of security and protection in the present day. From humble beginnings as solitary figures in the dark, the night watchman's legacy has evolved into the complex systems of security and law enforcement that shape our lives today. The night watchman, originally a simple figure charged with the basic task of protecting his community from external threats, has had a profound and lasting influence on the development of modern security institutions. What began as an informal and often perilous role, particularly in ancient societies, gradually transformed into the highly regulated, professionalized police forces and private security systems we rely on today. By examining the evolution of the night watchman's duties, we can better understand how these early protectors laid the groundwork for the security institutions we now depend on for safety, order, and protection. In ancient civilizations, the role of the night watchman was essential in maintaining order and defending against external threats. In many early societies, there were no formal police forces, no centralized institutions to uphold the law. Instead, the watchman, often a member of the community, was entrusted with safeguarding the town or village, typically during the nighttime hours when vulnerability was highest. These early watchmen would patrol streets, stand guard at gates, and respond to emergencies, acting as the first line of defense against both physical and moral dangers. Their responsibilities, however, were limited, often poorly paid, and lacking official authority, and their duties were dangerous, especially in a world where lawlessness was common and threats were both known and unknown. As societies grew more complex, and as cities began to expand and urbanize, the informal role of the night watchman began to give way to more organized forms of law enforcement. The development of the modern police force is intrinsically linked to this transformation. In medieval and early modern Europe, city governments began to formalize security efforts, moving from ad hoc, volunteer watchmen to organized, professional law enforcement. The early night watchmen provided the foundation for these developments, as their role as protectors of the community evolved into the structured responsibilities of modern-day police officers. The same principles of vigilance and protection that guided the night watchman's work became central to the operation of police forces, which were tasked not only with maintaining physical security, but also with upholding social order and enforcing laws. By the 19th century, the establishment of formal police forces became a hallmark of industrialized societies. The London Metropolitan Police, founded in 1829 by Sir Robert Peel, marked a significant shift in the way security was organized. With an emphasis on preventing crime rather than merely responding to it, the police force was structured to maintain peace, order, and safety in an increasingly complex urban environment. These new law enforcement institutions took inspiration from the watchman's role, but were far more specialized, with well-defined training, duties, and legal authority. The watchman's shift from a solitary figure patrolling the streets to a member of a professionalized police force symbolizes the evolution of societal needs, from informal, localized protection to the organized, systematic efforts to maintain law and order. The legacy of the night watchman also extends into the world of private security. While police forces became the cornerstone of public protection, the rise of private security firms emerged as a natural extension of the watchman's role in safeguarding property and individuals. Private security personnel today serve a similar function to the night watchmen of the past. They monitor businesses, homes, and public spaces, providing an additional layer of protection in a world that increasingly values safety and surveillance. Whether in the form of security guards in buildings, malls, or residential neighborhoods, or the use of security systems that monitor video feeds around the clock, modern private security mirrors the watchman's role in keeping an eye on the unseen dangers of the world. Much like their predecessors, modern security professionals are tasked with maintaining a sense of safety, often working alongside law enforcement to ensure that society runs smoothly. Beyond these professionalized roles, the symbolism of the night watchman as a protector and guardian still resonates in the broader social fabric. Today, the archetype of the watchman is often invoked in the language of justice, community responsibility, and moral duty. The watchman represents the fundamental human need to protect others, whether it is one's family, one's community, or the broader society. This symbolism continues to play a central role in the development of law enforcement agencies and security firms. The watchman, in his various forms, serves as a reminder that protection is not just about keeping physical threats at bay, it is about maintaining the integrity and safety of the community and ensuring that justice is served. While the specific duties of the night watchman have evolved into the modern roles of police officers and security personnel, the essence of the watchman's purpose remains unchanged. The need for vigilance, for protection against the unknown, and for a sense of safety within a community is a universal, timeless drive. The night watchman's legacy continues to shape the institutions that safeguard our lives and our property, but his influence goes beyond just the evolution of security practices. It speaks to a deeper human instinct to care for one another, to stand guard, and to protect against the darkness. As we look to the future, the role of the watchman, whether in the form of human security personnel or automated systems, will undoubtedly continue to evolve. With the advent of AI, drones, and surveillance technology, the way we think about protection and safety will change, but the core principles of vigilance, responsibility, and guardianship will remain. The night watchman's role, though transformed by technology, will continue to be at the heart of our efforts to maintain order, safety, and security in a world that will always be full of uncertainty. Having examined the lasting influence of the night watchman on modern institutions, the next section will explore how the role of vigilance and protection will continue to evolve in the face of future challenges. With the advent of new technologies and societal shifts, the future of security is bound to change, but the core need to protect and guard against the unknown will remain. From the solitary figures pacing the shadows of ancient villages, to the highly trained officers patrolling our cities today, the spirit of the night watchman lives on in every uniformed protector. The night watchman's legacy has had a profound and lasting influence on the development of modern security forces. What began as an informal, often dangerous duty performed by volunteers or local community members gradually evolved into the highly organized and professional police forces we rely on today. The transition from rudimentary patrols to structured law enforcement is not just a story of institutional change, it is a story of how societies have come to understand and manage safety, security, and order. The evolution of the night watchman into the modern police officer reflects the changing needs of society, as well as the growing complexity of what it means to protect and serve a community. In ancient times, the watchman's role was often informal and community-based. The earliest forms of organized nighttime patrols, particularly in the ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern civilizations, were established to protect communities from external threats, such as bandits or invaders. In Rome, the concept of the cohortes urbanae served as the first step toward a professionalized security force, though it was still primarily concerned with preventing civil disorder and protecting public infrastructure. These early watchmen were more reactive than proactive, responding to immediate threats but with little authority or regulation. In many cases, they were volunteers, tasked with guarding the streets and marketplaces during the dark hours, when the risks of crime and violence were highest. As cities grew and societies became more complex, the need for formalized law enforcement became more apparent. The medieval period in Europe saw the rise of local night watch groups, often composed of unpaid volunteers or individuals with limited training. These groups were typically responsible for maintaining law and order within the community, which included enforcing curfews, preventing crime, and guarding important structures like city gates and bridges. However, this model was far from efficient. Volunteers were often ill-prepared, and their authority was limited. The informal nature of the night watch created a patchwork of local efforts, rather than a cohesive, centralized system of law enforcement. The shift towards professionalized police forces began in the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Europe and North America. The rapid growth of cities during the Industrial Revolution, coupled with an increase in crime and social unrest, highlighted the need for a more formalized and efficient security apparatus. In London, the creation of the Metropolitan Police Force in 1829 by Sir Robert Peel marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of law enforcement. Peel's principles of policing emphasized the need for organized, professional, and accountable forces that would serve and protect the public rather than serve as instruments of oppression. The Metropolitan Police was the first modern police force, operating under a clear mandate of preventing crime through visible patrols and fostering community trust. The idea of the bobbies or constables on foot patrol was a direct descendant of the community-based watchman system, but with a professional structure and legal authority. Similarly, in North America, the development of police forces followed the same trajectory. The first organized police forces in American cities were modeled after London's Metropolitan Police. The role of the night watchman evolved into more formalized patrols, often supplemented by the formation of city or town police departments. These early American police forces were tasked not only with preventing crime, but also with maintaining public order and enforcing new laws that emerged as cities grew and became more complex. The symbolism of the watchman as a protector of society continued to persist within law enforcement culture, even as the role itself became institutionalized. The night watchman was always a figure of vigilance, constantly scanning the environment for potential threats, standing guard over the community. Modern police officers, while equipped with more sophisticated tools and training, still carry that same symbolic duty of vigilance and protection. The metaphorical watchman is alive in the patrols, the visibility of law enforcement officers in public spaces, and their ongoing role in ensuring safety and order. Despite the advancement in technology and the increased bureaucratization of law enforcement, the core responsibility of the modern officer has remained much the same: to protect society and its citizens from threats, both external and internal. The development of modern law enforcement systems was not just about improving efficiency, but also about addressing the growing complexity of urban life. Early watchmen had to balance their responsibilities between protecting physical spaces and maintaining social order. The modern police force took this concept a step further, incorporating a wide range of specialized roles: criminal investigation, traffic control, and emergency response that addressed the multifaceted needs of urban populations. What began as a nighttime vigil against crime and disorder evolved into a comprehensive security apparatus that sought to ensure public safety in every aspect of life. Today, the legacy of the night watchman lives on in the structure and philosophy of modern police forces, private security agencies, and the systems of surveillance that pervade our cities. The night watchman's role, once defined by limited authority and physical presence, has expanded into a complex network of professionals trained to handle a variety of security-related issues. However, despite the sophistication of modern law enforcement, the essential spirit of the night watchman remains embedded within the culture of policing: the sense of duty to protect, the vigilance that defines the watchful eye, and the constant effort to maintain order in an ever-changing world. The evolution of security forces, from the rudimentary patrols of early civilizations to the highly trained professionals of today, highlights how society has responded to the increasing demands of protection. As cities grew and became more interconnected, so did the need for formalized law enforcement systems that could address the complexity of urban living. The night watchman, in all his various forms, represents both a response to the fears and threats of his time and a symbol of the enduring human need for protection and safety. After exploring the historical evolution of security forces, we will now turn to the challenges facing modern law enforcement. In today's world, where digital threats and globalized crime networks pose new risks, the role of the watchman has expanded beyond traditional physical patrols. The next section will discuss how modern security practices are increasingly reliant on technology and what that means for the future of vigilance and protection. The night watchman's vigilant eyes may no longer belong to a single person, but to an army of cameras, algorithms, and drones that never sleep. In the age of surveillance, who is really watching, and what are they seeing? As technology continues to advance at an unprecedented pace, the role of the night watchman has undergone a radical transformation. What was once a solitary figure walking the streets, physically guarding a community from the dangers lurking in the dark, has shifted into a new era of digital vigilance, powered by artificial intelligence, drones, and an array of surveillance systems. Today, security relies heavily on invisible watchman machines that monitor, predict, and record the activities of individuals and communities 24/7, all under the guise of protection. Modern surveillance technologies are rapidly reshaping the way we think about security. AI-powered monitoring systems are at the forefront of this transformation. These systems can analyze vast amounts of data from cameras, sensors, and even social media to detect patterns of behavior, predict potential threats, and provide real-time alerts to law enforcement or private security firms. In many cities, surveillance cameras are equipped with facial recognition software that can identify individuals within seconds, providing an unparalleled level of monitoring. Drones, once a tool for military operations, are now being deployed in civilian spaces to patrol neighborhoods, monitor traffic, and even respond to emergencies. These technologies, once the stuff of science fiction, are now a part of everyday life, offering a level of security and vigilance that no human watchman could ever match. One of the most significant advancements in modern security is the use of predictive analytics. This technology uses data to forecast where and when crimes are likely to occur, enabling law enforcement to deploy resources more effectively. By analyzing patterns of criminal activity, predictive systems can identify hotspots where crimes are more likely to happen, allowing authorities to act proactively. While this may reduce the need for reactive measures, it also raises questions about the accuracy and fairness of such systems. The idea that an algorithm could predict future crimes based on past data is fraught with potential biases, and the implications of this technology are far-reaching. Are we comfortable with the idea of being monitored and profiled based on past behaviors or patterns that may not accurately represent an individual's intentions or actions? The use of facial recognition technology in public spaces is another area where the role of the night watchman has dramatically shifted. In many urban areas, surveillance cameras with facial recognition capabilities are now ubiquitous. These systems can track individuals as they move through city streets, shopping centers, and even public transportation networks. While proponents argue that this technology enhances safety by identifying criminals or missing persons, others raise concerns about privacy violations and the potential for misuse. With millions of faces being scanned and stored in databases, who owns that data? Who has access to it? And how long is it kept? The question of privacy in the age of surveillance is one of the most pressing ethical dilemmas we face today, as digital watchmen take over the duties once held by human guards. On one hand, the rise of surveillance technology offers undeniable benefits. It can deter crime, provide rapid responses to emergencies, and help identify perpetrators of criminal activity. In some cases, AI-driven systems have even been credited with solving crimes that would have otherwise gone unsolved. These technologies can make our cities safer, more efficient, and more predictable. However, as the power of surveillance expands, so too do the risks associated with it. One of the most significant concerns is the erosion of personal privacy. In a world where every movement, every transaction, and every online interaction is tracked and analyzed, the boundaries of personal freedom become increasingly unclear. How much of our lives are we willing to surrender to ensure our safety? What happens when the tools meant to protect us start to infringe upon our rights and autonomy? The ethical implications of living in a society where surveillance is pervasive are complex and multifaceted. There is a fine line between ensuring public safety and infringing upon individual freedoms. The constant monitoring of citizens, even for noble purposes, such as crime prevention, raises difficult questions about consent and control. Do we want to live in a world where every action is being watched and analyzed by machines, even if it means greater security? The increasing reliance on technology for protection has led to a society where trust is placed more in algorithms and automated systems than in human judgment. While the night watchman of the past was a figure of trust, embedded in the community, today's digital watchman is a faceless system working relentlessly to protect us, but also removing much of the personal connection and accountability that once defined the role of the watchman. Another critical concern is the potential for misuse of surveillance technology. As law enforcement agencies, private security firms, and even corporations gain access to more powerful tools, the temptation to use these systems for purposes other than public safety grows. The widespread use of surveillance data for commercial purposes, targeting individuals with personalized ads based on their movements, behaviors, or preferences, can feel invasive, even if it's framed as a convenience. Furthermore, governments around the world are increasingly adopting surveillance systems that monitor citizens' activities, often without adequate checks and balances. In some countries, these technologies are being used to suppress dissent, monitor political opponents, and control marginalized populations. This shift toward total surveillance presents a danger not just to individual privacy, but to the very foundations of democratic society. Despite these concerns, it's clear that the role of the watchman, whether human or machine, remains central to modern security practices. The question, however, is no longer just about who is watching, but how they are watching and what they are seeing. Are we willing to accept the trade-offs between security and privacy, between safety and freedom? As we move further into an age of ubiquitous surveillance, these questions will continue to shape our understanding of what it means to live in a society where vigilance is no longer a human task, but a technological one. Having explored the technological shift in security and the role of digital watchmen, the next section will examine the ethical implications of living under constant surveillance. We will reflect on how this shift has shaped societal norms, influenced individual behavior, and led to broader discussions on privacy, autonomy, and control in an increasingly monitored world. In a world where every move is recorded, we've become both the watched and the watchers. But is this constant vigilance truly protecting us, or are we losing something far more valuable in the process? Living in a world where surveillance is everywhere, embedded in public spaces, digital interactions, and even in our personal devices, presents both benefits and profound challenges. CCTV cameras dot city streets, tracking our every step. Smartphones track our location and monitor our habits. And tech companies collect vast amounts of personal data to target us with ads, refine their algorithms, and predict our needs. While these systems promise to keep us safe, enhance efficiency, and prevent crime, they also raise fundamental questions about privacy, autonomy, and freedom. We live in a surveillance society where safety is a constant concern, but so too is the growing loss of our personal freedoms. The pervasive nature of modern surveillance impacts not just our physical environment, but our psychological and social well-being. In a society where cameras are omnipresent and data is continuously collected, the knowledge that we are always being observed can affect our behavior in subtle and profound ways. People modify their actions, speech, and even their thoughts based on the awareness that they are being watched, whether by government authorities, corporations, or even fellow citizens. This self-regulation, while it may deter some forms of antisocial behavior, also contributes to an environment of anxiety and distrust. It creates a sense of unease, where personal space, privacy, and the freedom to act without external judgment are constantly compromised. We live under an invisible but ever-present gaze, and over time, this can erode our ability to feel truly free. This shift from the human night watchman who offered protection and reassurance through physical presence and a personal connection to the abstract and invisible watchman of cameras, sensors, and algorithms is emblematic of the transformation in how we approach security today. Where the night watchman once stood at the gates, visible to the community, embodying trust and a shared responsibility for safety, modern surveillance operates behind the scenes, often unnoticed by those it monitors. Unlike the night watchman, who interacted with the people he protected, today's surveillance is more faceless and impersonal, stripping away the connection between the protector and the protected. We have traded the human element of trust and interaction for a system that is more efficient but far less comforting. The societal effects of constant observation are wide-reaching. One of the most significant consequences is how it affects the dynamics of trust and community. When every movement is watched, the very foundation of interpersonal trust is strained. We are no longer certain whether we can trust others, as everyone is a potential observer of our actions. At the same time, we must also live with the reality that we, too, are always watching and being watched. Social behaviors that once thrived on privacy and autonomy are increasingly influenced by the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is observing. In the public sphere, this can lead to a phenomenon known as surveillance capitalism, where personal data is not only recorded, but commodified, fueling a market that profits from our every action. On a deeper level, the constant surveillance leads to what some experts refer to as a chilling effect. People begin to censor themselves, avoiding certain behaviors or opinions for fear of being recorded or misinterpreted. What was once a space for free expression and individual thought becomes increasingly regulated, even in private moments. The very essence of personal freedom is undermined when everything we do, whether in public or private, can potentially be monitored, stored, and scrutinized. While the benefits of surveillance systems cannot be ignored, preventing crime, ensuring safety, and responding to emergencies more quickly, the balance between protection and privacy is delicate. Are we, as a society, willing to trade the values of privacy, autonomy, and free expression for the perceived safety of constant surveillance? And if so, at what cost? The night watchman, who once embodied community connection and vigilance in the most human sense, has now been replaced by a faceless, digital observer, raising important ethical questions. Are we truly safer in this hyper-surveilled world, or have we inadvertently created a society that values control and security over freedom and individual rights? These questions are more pressing than ever, as surveillance technology continues to evolve at an exponential rate. The line between protection and intrusion becomes harder to discern. As AI, facial recognition, and biometric data become increasingly sophisticated, the potential for misuse and the erosion of personal freedoms grow. The convenience of safety and security systems, powered by surveillance, must be weighed against the loss of privacy, the autonomy to make personal choices without fear of judgment, and the fundamental right to exist without being constantly monitored. As we reflect on the societal impact of living in a surveillance society, we must consider how this trend will shape the future of human interaction. Will we continue to sacrifice personal freedoms for the sake of security, or will we find a way to balance these competing values? The next section will look ahead to how emerging technologies and evolving societal norms might reshape the role of security and human interaction in the next 50 years. As we continue to confront the challenges of the digital age, the future of security balancing vigilance with freedom remains uncertain, yet deeply critical to the fabric of our societies. As technology advances, what happens when our watchmen can predict threats before they even happen? Will we reach a future where our protection is no longer just physical, but preemptive, personal, and pervasive? The future of security holds transformative possibilities, driven by innovations in artificial intelligence, robotics, and biotechnology. As these technologies evolve, so too does the concept of what it means to protect and guard. The traditional role of the watchman, standing vigilant against visible threats, may soon give way to more personalized and anticipatory forms of protection, radically reshaping the landscape of security in the decades to come. Imagine a world where security doesn't rely on human guards or even automated surveillance systems, but on intelligent technology that predicts and prevents threats before they materialize. Advances in AI could give rise to predictive security systems capable of anticipating risks by analyzing vast amounts of data in real time, from social interactions to environmental cues. These systems would not just monitor but actively intervene, ensuring that harm is avoided before it even becomes a threat. This predictive power could extend beyond traditional surveillance, utilizing behavioral patterns and context-driven analysis to protect individuals and communities at an unprecedented level of precision. Biometric monitoring offers another potential leap forward in personal security. In the near future, individuals may rely on advanced biometric systems integrating facial recognition, retinal scans, heart rate monitoring, or even DNA-based identification to ensure their safety. These systems could constantly monitor a person's health, emotional state, and physical environment, providing real-time alerts about potential dangers, from medical emergencies to external threats. With the integration of neurotechnology, the very brainwaves and thoughts of individuals could be analyzed to detect signs of distress or danger, creating a form of preemptive protection that extends beyond anything the traditional night watchman ever imagined. Moreover, the potential for robotics to serve as guardians in everyday life is on the horizon. Robotic assistants could patrol neighborhoods, respond to emergencies, and assist law enforcement, providing constant vigilance without human fatigue. These machines could be more than just watchful. They could interact with the environment, making split-second decisions and taking action to mitigate risks before they escalate. With the aid of drones, AI-powered robots could even provide on-the-ground security in real time, swiftly reacting to changes in the environment or human behavior. While these advances offer the promise of greater security, they also bring with them societal implications that cannot be ignored. The integration of such sophisticated technologies into our daily lives could redefine human interactions and the concept of privacy. With personalized, predictive security, the line between protection and intrusion could blur, as individuals' personal data, down to their thoughts and physical states, becomes a crucial part of the security fabric. How will we navigate the balance between safeguarding personal freedom and maintaining security in a world where everything can be monitored, analyzed, and predicted? As we look toward a future where security is increasingly automated and anticipatory, the role of the night watchman will evolve from the visible figure patrolling the streets to an invisible network of interconnected technologies working tirelessly to protect us. These innovations will change the very way we interact with each other in public and private spaces, challenging our notions of privacy, autonomy, and the human need for connection in the face of constant vigilance. Moving from these futuristic technologies to their impact on society, the next section will reflect on how the enduring legacy of the night watchman continues to shape humanity, from ancient civilizations to the futuristic cities of tomorrow. It will serve as a closing reflection on the timeless need for guardianship and vigilance, whether embodied by humans or machines, as we continue to navigate the complexities of safety and freedom in an increasingly interconnected world. The night watchman has stood watch for millennia, from ancient fires to digital screens, guarding against what we cannot see. And as the world continues to change, the watchman will remain forever, standing between us and the darkness. The role of the night watchman, once embodied by a solitary figure pacing the streets of ancient villages, has evolved dramatically over time. From the humble origins of ancient watchmen standing guard against external threats, the figure of the watchman has become a symbol of vigilance, protection, and the deep human need to confront the darkness, both literal and metaphorical. Through the ages, the watchman has adapted to the changing world, from the ancient sentinels guarding cities, to the medieval watchmen enforcing local laws, to the digital guardians of the modern world, watching over our neighborhoods, cities, and even our online lives. Yet, despite the evolution of security systems and technologies, the fundamental need for protection and the human instinct to safeguard one another remains unchanged. From ancient times, the watchman's purpose was clear: to stand as the first line of defense against threats, ensuring that the village or city remained safe during the vulnerable hours of night. Whether it was to protect against wild animals, enemy invaders, or the potential of internal strife, the night watchman embodied society's need to create a sense of order and security in a world that was often unpredictable and full of dangers. These early watchmen often worked alone, with only their eyes and their ears to rely on. They were the unseen guardians, invisible protectors standing in the shadows, their presence ensuring that the villagers could rest easy knowing that they were being watched over. As civilizations advanced and societies grew more complex, so too did the role of the watchman. In medieval Europe, the night watchman became more formalized, tasked not only with guarding against external threats, but also with maintaining internal order. These figures were responsible for upholding curfews, preventing crime, and ensuring the moral fabric of society remained intact. The night watchman, once a solitary figure, now symbolized the tension between law and disorder, order and chaos. The watchman's role began to intertwine with the growing sense of law enforcement, as local governments and towns began to rely more heavily on community-based security measures to maintain peace. The advent of the police force in the 19th century marked a significant shift in the role of the watchman. With the rise of formalized law enforcement, the watchman's duties were absorbed by a more structured and professional institution. The once solitary protector evolved into an entire force of uniformed officers who maintained law and order across increasingly urbanized and industrialized societies. Despite the professionalization of law enforcement, the core principles of the watchman, vigilance, protection, and safeguarding against the unknown remained integral to the police force's mission. In the 21st century, the role of the watchman has undergone yet another transformation, this time driven by the rise of digital technology. Surveillance cameras, drones, and AI-powered security systems have replaced the human presence of the watchman with invisible, omnipresent digital guardians. These digital watchmen monitor cities, homes, and even our online behaviors, using advanced algorithms and facial recognition to detect and respond to potential threats in real time. The physical watchman has become a virtual entity, constantly scanning the environment and analyzing data, providing an unprecedented level of vigilance and protection. While these technologies offer efficiency, speed, and reach beyond the capabilities of human watchmen, they also raise important questions about privacy, autonomy, and the ethical implications of living under constant surveillance. Despite these technological advancements, the symbolic role of the watchman continues to resonate deeply with us. Whether standing at the gates of an ancient city or patrolling the streets in a high-tech police car, the watchman represents something fundamental about the human experience: the desire for safety, the need for protection from the unknown, and the instinct to guard against the dangers that lurk just beyond our sight. Even as technology becomes more sophisticated, the core values embodied by the night watchman duty, vigilance, and guardianship remain central to the systems of protection that safeguard our lives. In a world that is constantly changing, the watchman remains a constant symbol of the timeless human need for security. The legacy of the night watchman is not just about the figure itself, but about the societal values that it represents. Across history, the watchman has been a reflection of the needs, fears, and desires of the societies they served. In ancient civilizations, the watchman's duty was rooted in the basic survival need to protect against external threats. In medieval societies, the watchman represented the struggle between law and disorder and the need for moral and social regulation. Today, the watchman's role is deeply tied to the complex relationship between safety, privacy, and technology, as we navigate an increasingly surveilled world. But no matter the era or the form the watchman takes, the need for vigilance, for someone or something to stand guard, remains an essential part of our collective experience. As we look to the future, the role of the watchman will continue to evolve, shaped by new technologies, shifting societal norms, and emerging global challenges. Yet, one thing remains clear: the need for guardianship, for the ever-watchful eye standing between us and the unknown, will never disappear. Whether embodied by human officers or digital systems, the watchman's eternal vigil will continue, offering protection, safety, and reassurance in a world that will always need guardians to confront the darkness. In the closing reflections, we will consider how the legacy of the night watchman continues to influence the way we approach security, safety, and our collective need for protection. As we move into the future, the watchman, in all his forms, will remain a symbol of our enduring commitment to safeguarding our communities, our freedoms, and our sense of security. The watchman's vigil is not just a story of the past, it's a call to all of us, urging us to guard what we hold dear, to stand vigilant against the unknown, and to protect the world around us. As we reach the conclusion of this journey through the legacy of the night watchman, we are reminded that the figure of the watchman is not just a historical archetype, but an enduring symbol that resonates deeply within each of us. The watchman's role, standing guard, protecting, and ensuring safety, extends beyond the streets of ancient villages or the surveillance systems of modern cities. It is a role we all, in some way, play in our own lives. Throughout history, the night watchman's duty was a communal one, protecting not just buildings or cities, but the very fabric of society. Yet, the essence of the watchman is not confined to public spaces. It stretches into our personal lives, our homes, and our relationships. In our own families, we often act as watchmen, standing guard over those we love, ensuring their safety, and making choices that protect them from harm. We guard our homes, our communities, and our sense of security with the same vigilance that ancient sentinels displayed. But the threats we face may be more abstract and less visible, emotional, psychological, or digital. In the modern world, this act of vigilance can feel overwhelming at times. We live in a society where danger often feels distant, yet anxiety and uncertainty are ever present. In many ways, the modern-day watchman is no longer just an external figure. It has become internalized in the form of our constant awareness, our hyper-vigilance in the face of an unpredictable world. We are vigilant in protecting our families from harm, in setting boundaries in our personal relationships, and in maintaining our mental and emotional well-being. Each day, we take on the responsibility of guarding the things that matter most to us: our safety, our privacy, our values, and our loved ones. The legacy of the watchman is not just one of physical protection, but of resilience, courage, and responsibility. To be a watchman is to accept the duty of safeguarding what is precious, to act as a protector in a world that can often seem uncertain and chaotic. Just as the night watchman stood in the darkness, waiting for the unknown, we too find ourselves in moments of uncertainty, called to stand vigilant against the challenges that threaten the well-being of ourselves and those around us. But the watchman's legacy also teaches us about the importance of community. The watchman's role was never one of isolation. It was always about serving the greater good, ensuring that everyone in the community could rest easy, knowing they were being protected. Today, our role as modern watchmen can extend to the communities we live in, the causes we believe in, and the world we want to protect for future generations. Our vigilance is not just about our personal safety, but about how we contribute to the collective well-being, how we stand together to guard against the darkness, whether that darkness is physical, moral, or social. So, as we reflect on the watchman's role throughout history, we must also consider how we, too, can embody that same vigilance. In our personal lives, we must be watchful over the things that matter most: our families, our communities, and our values. In a world that is rapidly changing, where threats are increasingly invisible and intangible, we must draw strength from the enduring symbol of the watchman. His legacy is not only about standing guard, but about standing together, protecting one another, and facing the unknown with courage and resolve. The role of the night watchman has evolved through time, from the streets of ancient cities to the digital watchman of the present day. Yet, the essence of vigilance, protection, and responsibility remains the same. We are all called to be watchmen, in our own way. The question we must ask ourselves is, what are we protecting, and how will we stand guard over it? With these final reflections, the documentary closes, inviting the audience to consider their own role in this timeless cycle of vigilance and protection. The legacy of the night watchman lives on not just in history, but in the very fabric of our lives, reminding us that the need to guard, to protect, and to watch over what matters will always be part of the human experience. As the future unfolds, the night watchman will evolve, but his mission remains unchanged: to guard, protect, and ensure that we are safe from the unknown, no matter how the world around us transforms. The archetype of the night watchman has proven to be resilient, surviving centuries of change and adapting to the evolving needs of society. From ancient civilizations to the digital age, the need for protection and vigilance has remained a constant, transcending time and place. As we look to the future, the legacy of the night watchman will continue to shape the way we think about security, guardianship, and the human desire to protect and be protected. However, the figure of the watchman will likely shift in response to new societal, technological, and cultural forces. What does this evolving figure of the watchman look like for the generations to come? Young people today are growing up in a world that is vastly different from the one their ancestors knew. A world that is increasingly interconnected, digital, and globalized. In this context, the concept of protection and guardianship is evolving in profound ways. No longer are the primary concerns of security limited to physical threats, but also to the complex, intangible dangers that come with the digital age: identity theft, cyberbullying, data breaches, and the manipulation of information. While the watchman's original role was to physically guard against threats from the outside, today's watchmen often take on the responsibility of protecting what is intangible: our personal data, privacy, and the very truths that define our reality. The digital watchman, powered by artificial intelligence and surveillance technologies, may play an increasing role in future generations' conception of security. However, even as technology continues to provide new ways to monitor and protect, the fundamental human need for a personal, relatable protector remains central. The idea of a watchman is not merely about surveillance or detection, but about trust and the emotional connection between the protector and those they serve. Young people today are growing up in a world where technology surrounds them, but they are also increasingly aware of its potential for misuse. They are more attuned to questions of privacy, ethics, and autonomy, and these concerns will undoubtedly shape how they view the figure of the watchman in the future. The archetype of the watchman also continues to hold a prominent place in popular culture, reflecting society's enduring need for figures of protection. Superheroes, such as Batman, Spider-Man, and others, are modern-day reimaginings of the Watchmen, individuals who stand guard over their cities, protecting them from unseen or unspoken threats. These figures are not only physically powerful, but also morally complex, reflecting the idea that true guardianship involves more than just physical strength. The modern superhero, like the ancient Watchman, represents the struggle between safety and danger, the fight to maintain order in a world full of chaos. Whether on screen or in print, these characters resonate deeply with young audiences because they represent our shared desire to confront the unknown and protect what we hold dear. Similarly, dystopian literature often features figures who embody the role of the Watchman in a world that has lost its way. In these dark and uncertain futures, the Watchman is not always a traditional hero, but a symbol of resilience and resistance. Figures like the rebels in the Hunger Games or the protectors in 1984 stand as guardians in a world that has abandoned the ideals of freedom, trust, and safety. They remind us that the need for a protector is not just about safeguarding against physical threats, but about holding on to values like justice, truth, and individual autonomy. The Night Watchman, as a symbol, continues to evolve, but remains relevant because it taps into a timeless fear. The fear of what happens when protection fails, when vigilance is lost, and when the darkness is left unchecked. For future generations, the Night Watchman will continue to evolve in response to the changing landscape of technology and culture. The digital age may give rise to invisible watchmen, AI-powered algorithms that protect us from cyber threats, or smart surveillance systems that predict crime before it occurs. But despite these advancements, the essence of the Watchman, someone or something that stands between us and the unknown, will remain a central part of human consciousness. As long as there are threats to safety, privacy, and autonomy, the archetype of the Watchman will resonate, reminding us of the enduring need to protect ourselves, our communities, and our world. As we reflect on the future of the Watchman, we are reminded that while the form of protection may change, the need for a guardian will never fade. Future generations will continue to grapple with the complex balance between safety and freedom, trust and surveillance, autonomy and control. The legacy of the Watchman will continue to be shaped by these forces, but the core mission remains the same: to watch over, to protect, and to ensure that the darkness does not overtake us. With this reflection on the evolving role of the Watchman in the future, we will conclude this exploration by looking back at how the legacy of the Night Watchman continues to shape the world we live in today and the world we will inhabit tomorrow. The need for vigilance and protection, no matter the form it takes, will always be a part of the human experience, reminding us that guardianship is not just a role, but a universal responsibility. The Night Watchman never truly disappears, he becomes part of us all. In every corner of the world, in every quiet moment of vigilance, the Watchman lives on, and his watchful eyes guide us through the darkness of the unknown. As we come to the close of this journey, we are reminded that the role of the Watchman is not confined to the pages of history or the flickering images on a screen. It exists within each of us. From ancient times, when the Watchman stood as a solitary figure in the shadows, guarding against dangers both seen and unseen, to today, where the idea of protection has evolved into complex systems of technology and law enforcement, the core essence of the Watchman remains a deeply human instinct. It is an instinct rooted in our need for safety, security, and the protection of what we hold dear. In our daily lives, we each take on the mantle of the Watchman in our own ways. We guard our families, protect our communities, and stand watch against the uncertainties that we face in an unpredictable world. Whether it's watching over a loved one, standing up for what's right in our society, or keeping our own mental and emotional boundaries intact, the spirit of the Watchman is not a distant concept. It is something alive in each of us. Vigilance, once a physical act of standing guard, has transformed in the modern world, but the need to protect remains constant. The Watchman's legacy is a responsibility that binds us together as a society. It's a call to be vigilant not only in protecting our physical spaces, but in preserving our values, our trust in one another, and our commitment to facing the unknown together. The Watchman's eyes are always watching, guiding us to be more conscious of what we protect and why. As we reflect on the timeless nature of the Night Watchman, we realize that it is a role that continues to resonate, not just in the history of our societies, but within our own hearts. The Watchman is more than just a figure in a distant past, he is part of us all. The Night Watchman's story is far from over. As long as there is darkness to guard against, there will always be a need for those who stand vigilant in every corner of the world and in every heart. The Watchman is eternal. In the journey we've undertaken, we've explored the evolution of the Night Watchman, from ancient figures patrolling the streets of early civilizations to the high-tech, invisible guardians of our modern world. The Night Watchman, in all his various forms, has always symbolized humanity's enduring need for protection and security. As the centuries have passed, the methods and technologies of vigilance have changed, but the underlying desire to guard against the unknown has remained steadfast. From the first lonely sentinel standing under a flickering torchlight to the AI-driven surveillance systems keeping watch over our cities, the Watchman's mission has always been clear: to protect, to stand guard, and to ensure that no one faces the darkness alone. This documentary has explored how the Night Watchman has left a profound impact on history, society, and culture. We've seen how his role has evolved and how it continues to shape our modern understanding of security. As we move forward, we carry with us the timeless values of vigilance and protection. Whether in our personal lives, in our communities, or in the technological systems that now help safeguard us, the essence of the Night Watchman will continue to guide us. The future may bring new challenges, and the form of the Watchman may change with the times, but his mission will remain the same: to stand between us and the darkness, to protect what we cherish, and to ensure that we never face the unknown without a protector by our side. As the credits roll, we extend our deepest gratitude to the historians, psychologists, technologists, and cultural experts whose contributions made this documentary possible. Their expertise helped us explore the rich history and profound cultural significance of the Night Watchman, and we thank them for their invaluable insights. Special thanks to those who shared their stories, research, and knowledge, and to the production team who brought this vision to life. We also acknowledge the individuals and communities whose ongoing commitment to vigilance and protection serves as a reminder that the role of the Watchman is never truly finished. As the world continues to change, so too must our commitment to caring for each other, standing guard over our freedoms, and confronting the uncertainties that lie ahead. Just as the Watchman has watched over the world for centuries, we too must remain vigilant, protecting one another, our communities, and the world we all share. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time, and for reflecting on the timeless importance of vigilance and protection in our lives today.